Watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GBNews.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat. Did you know, Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. I campaigned in the largest democratic vote in our island story. I know this country has so much to be proud of. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better. The wisdom of the nation is in its people. Vox Populi, Vox Dei. That's why I'm joining the People's Channel. Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
Well, a very good afternoon, everybody. It's Patrick Christys here on GB News with you all the way through until 6 p.m. And I start my show today with some big breaking news. 21 people have been convicted in what is the largest ever child sex crime investigation conducted by West Midlands Police. I'll have more on that deeply disturbing case very, very shortly. North of the border in Scotland, though, Nicola Sturgeon's husband has been arrested as part of a probe into SNP finances. So we'll bring you the latest there as well. And yes, we're expecting protests at a proposed migrant centre in Bexhill on the same day that it's also reported the government might confirm they're planning on housing migrants on a barge, and could Suella Braverman actually lose her seat. We'll bring you that as well. Of course we will. And in other news, yes, is Camilla your queen? Do you accept Queen Camilla? It's been announced for the first time today. She's dropped the consort bit. What do you make of that? We've got a poll running live now on Twitter at GB News. Is Camilla your queen? All that coming your way and much more. Yes, OK, well, I'm going to keep it simple in the inbox today. You can, of course, get in touch with whatever you like. I will endeavour to get as many of you on the show as possible. GBviews at gbnews.uk. I think the one for you is, do you think that Camilla is your queen? GBviews at gbnews.uk. But right now, it's your headlines with Tatiana.
Patrick, thank you very much and good afternoon. This is the latest from the GB newsroom. 21 people have been convicted of sexual offences against 7 young children in Walsall. West Midlands Police says the offences were committed over a period of almost 10 years. 3 trials have taken place in the last 15 months to ensure justice was served for the victims who were younger than 12 years old at the time of their abuse. Those convicted will be sentenced next month. A 52-year-old man has admitted killing an NHS nurse and her 2 children in Northamptonshire. Saju Chalevalel has pleaded guilty at Northampton Crown Court to the murders of Andrew Ashok and her children Jiva and Janvi, aged 6 and 4. All 3 of his victims died after being found with serious injuries at a house in Kettering last December. The case has been delayed until July. Nicola Sturgeon's husband, Peter Murrell, has been arrested. Detectives have been searching the SNP's headquarters, collecting evidence, and officers have set up a cordon outside of their home. The former chief executive of the Scottish National Party is being questioned as part of an ongoing investigation into finances of the SNP. Police Scotland has been investigating money being spent, which was part of an independence campaign fund. Scotland's new First Minister, Humza Yousaf, says the SNP is fully cooperating with that investigation.
Will have questions. They will have. There will be some concerns. Our party membership, of course, will have concerns too. So what I can commit to is party leaders that we want to be absolutely transparent. That's why I asked NEC to agree to a review around governance and transparency, and also to make sure it has some external input, which I think is really, really important to give confidence, not just to our party members, but to anybody in the public that might have some concerns too.
Alba party leader and former First Minister Alex Salmond says he's saddened by the turn of events.
I led the SNP for a long time, so I'm very sad about what's happening to it, and indeed about what it's become. But we should remember the cause of independence and the case for it has never been stronger, and that's what myself and Alba are concentrating on putting forward.
GB News understands more than 4,000 people have crossed the Channel so far this year. Around 500 illegal migrants arrived in the last 24 hours, with UK authorities intercepting at least 6 small boats already today. The Home Office says it's planning for 91,500 people to arrive this year, doubling last year's figures. The government has introduced tougher laws for anyone landing on UK shores illegally by banning them from claiming asylum. The chairman of the Blood Inquiry says compensation for victims should be extended. Thousands of patients were infected with HIV and hepatitis C through contaminated products in the 1970s and 80s. An independent inquiry has set out its second interim report. Last year, it recommended that victims of the contaminated blood scandal receive interim compensation of £100,000. Inquiry chairman Sir Brian Langstaff has described it as the biggest treatment disaster in the NHS.
My conclusion is that wrongs were done at individual, collective and systemic levels. Today is an important milestone on the journey to establish what happened and why, to learn the lessons of the past, and to make amends as much as we can as a nation.
Raids have been staged across the UK as part of an international cybersecurity sting. The National Crime Agency estimates the personal data of tens of thousands of Britons was stolen by website Genesis Market, which has now been taken offline. 80 million sets of credentials had been illegally acquired from sites including online banking, shopping and social media, and were being sold for as little as 56 pence per entry. Digital fingerprints from victims' devices were also on offer. 24 suspected users of the site have been arrested in the UK. The Home Secretary will face fellow Conservative Flick Drummond in a party vote today as they contest selection for the new constituency of Fareham and Waterlooville. Boundary changes will see the 2 Hampshire MPs compete to represent the Conservatives for the proposed new seat at the next election. Voters have been giving us their views on Suella Braverman.
What do I make of her?
Yeah.
Not a lot, really.
Not a lot.
Don't think she does a lot for the community round here. She's a mouthpiece on TV, I know that much.
Well, she's my MP, but I don't support her party.
I think she's doing a great job. Yeah, really impressed with what she's doing. She's on the right track. Got her mindset right for the country and immigration and, yeah, great Home Secretary.
No. No. She's the Home Secretary.
Oh, is she?
This is GB News. We'll bring you more news as it happens. Now it's back to Patrick.
OK, welcome along, everybody. Now, I'm just going to start by recapping the breaking news that we just brought to you. 21 people have been convicted of sexual offences against 7 young children in Walsall. West Midlands Police say the offences were committed over a period of almost 10 years in what's been the biggest investigation of its kind that they've dealt with. They will be sentenced next month, and I will bring you reaction to that story very, very shortly with a lot more details, so make sure you stay tuned for that. But we have lots more on throughout the course of the day. But now to a huge story coming out of Scotland that took everyone by surprise. Peter Morrell, who's the husband of Nicola Sturgeon, has been arrested in a police investigation into the SNP's finances. Morrell and Sturgeon's home in Glasgow has been searched, as have the SNP's headquarters. Morrell was the party's chief executive from 1999 until he resigned last month. Let's cross now to GB News' Scotland reporter Tony Maguire, who's outside Morrell and Sturgeon's house. Tony, I mean, it's quite the scene where you are. Police vans everywhere, tents up, etc. What's been going on?
Yeah, it's been quite an extraordinary day here in Glasgow. We believe that the Police Scotland arrived at about 8:30 this morning, erected this blue tent that you can see behind me, and over the course of the day since I've been here, since around 10 o'clock this morning, it's just been a constant stream of police entering the property. At one point I was talking to some of the other camera guys here, and we think there's maybe 25 to 30 police officers on site. Now it's worth saying that, you know, for an investigation like this, you know, people have been here from quite early and there was probably some shift changes involved in that, but really quite extraordinary, just the scale of the police presence here. Some excitement over when the vans opened at the back and boxes got pulled out, but it seems to be the biscuits and the milk for the teas and coffees for all the officers here today. So we've heard quite a lot already from the SNP. They're obviously quite clean to say that they are willing to cooperate, as they have been doing, with this investigation. Of course, Operation Branchform first started in about 2021, following several complaints into how the party was spending donation money, which was supposed to be ring-fenced for a second Scottish independence referendum. Now, £600,000 is no small sum. And then, of course, the other thing that is you know, allegedly wrapped up in this is the £100,000 loan that Peter Morrell, Nicola Sturgeon's husband, gave to the SNP after the fact that he was told that Police Scotland were already investigating the party's finances. We've heard quite a lot of response, and obviously everybody quite keen to remind everyone that this is an active police investigation, you know, and whether that goes for the Scottish National Party supporters on social media, or people like me, you know, who are on the front line. But we've got Alex Salmond, who, you know, spoke, I think, quite from the heart. You know, it's a side we haven't seen. Alex Salmond's usually coming out swinging in every interview he's in. But, you know, he seemed quite saddened at the direction the SNP has gone, and certainly what has become of it. But, you know, he maintains that the case for independence is as strong as ever. So, yeah, it's been quite an interesting day. And as you can imagine, everyone just urging Humza Yousaf, Scotland's new First Minister, to help with this investigation as much as possible.
Absolutely. Look, Tony, thank you very much. Tony Maguire there, who's outside Morrell and Sturgeon's house in Scotland. Yeah, just a recap there. The long-running probe now is linked to the spending of £600,000 raised by independent supporters to be used in a new campaign to leave the UK for Scottish independence. And it's understood that there have been complaints that the ring-fence cash has possibly been used improperly elsewhere. Anyway, so there we go. Right, OK, we're moving on now. Let's get more on the news that broke in the last hour. It was that big breaking news that 21 people have been convicted of sexual offences against 7 young children in Walsall. West Midlands Police says the offences were committed over a period of almost 10 years in what's been the biggest investigation of its kind that it's ever dealt with. They'll be sentenced next month. I'm joined now by Peter Blexley, who's a former Metropolitan Police detective. Peter, thank you very, very much. I mean, this is an absolutely, utterly disturbing and sickening case, isn't it? It's the largest child sex abuse inquiry that West Midlands Police say that they have ever dealt with, Peter.
Yes, and I think an enormous amount of praise needs to go to West Midlands Police over this investigation, which covers offences stretching over 10 years, multiple offenders, and, of course, multiple victims. This investigation has been going on for over 6 years. It was paused at one point, or certainly slowed because of COVID, and I think it's testimony to the determination and the detective ability of the officers that a case of such complexity is brought to such a successful conclusion. And I sincerely hope now that many of the victims of these appalling crimes will now regard themselves as survivors and might be able to move on with their lives.
Yeah, look, absolutely. And 22 people were prosecuted during the 3 trials, and this is one of the reasons why it wasn't reported on until now, because there were trials running in different areas, and so obviously once all of those can be wrapped up, then we can talk about it all. They did face numerous charges, including child sex abuse and child cruelty offences as well. Some people already been jailed, several others awaiting actual sentencing as well. And I think this will send shockwaves, really, Peter, through the community, no doubt, in Walsall, that child sexual abuse on this scale is clearly still taking place.
Yes, it may do, but I hope the message it will send will be to those people who may be watching and listening this afternoon, who are victims and who haven't been able to find it within themselves yet to come forward and speak, because you and I, Patrick, have discussed many times disturbing matters amongst our various police services, the length and breadth of the country. But I think these convictions, these successfully concluded trials, and this enormous investigation clearly sends out a message that if you are being abused, if you are a victim, if you are held against your will in any way, then please find the will, find the opportunity, come forward, speak to the police, and hopefully you will get justice.
Yeah, and also quite possibly hats off to the health service as well, because the abuse apparently came to light after concerns were raised following a hospital visit by one of the victims. So clearly there is a reporting process in there from the health service that goes right through to the police, and now some kind of justice. Just a quick one, and finally with you, Peter. In the round, bear in mind that the sentences already dished out to some of these people range from 28 months to life. OK, do you think that in general sentences for child sexual abuse situations are long enough in this country?
In my view, they can never be punitive enough. The longer, the better. Our children are so vulnerable. As a nation, we should protect them, cherish them, love them and nurture them, and most definitely not abuse them.
Peter, thank you very much, as ever, and thank you for coming on to react to that breaking news. Peter Bletchley there, who's a former Metropolitan Police detective. Well, GB News can reveal that more than 4,000 people have crossed the English Channel in small boats already this year. A huge surge in small boat crossings is underway in the Channel as people smuggling gangs take advantage of better weather conditions. In a bid to tackle the influx, the Home Secretary and Home Office has revealed illegal migrants are to be moved out of hotels and instead will be housed in disused military bases and barges. And actually, it's fascinating because both of those stories are kind of rearing their heads today, actually, because residents in the town of Bexhill-on-Sea in East Sussex have reacted with concern and anger to the news that a former prison there will be used to accommodate more than 1,000 people seeking asylum. It also comes as we are, reportedly anyway, expecting at some point today, possibly in the coming days, the announcement that they're going to be using a barge off the coast of Dorset to house these people as well. So we'll bring you more on that as we get it. And it also does tie in, doesn't it, with Suella Braverman facing a little bit of a squeaky bum town when it comes to her actually having a seat to stand in at the next election. But joining me now from Bexhill is GB News' South East of England reporter, Ray Addison. Ray, thank you very much. Now, look, what's all the controversy about here? Because I suppose this is a disused prison, isn't it? I suppose people will be ring-fenced in there, quite literally. What are the local community concerned about?
People are concerned, Patrick, because they feel that the numbers that is being proposed to be housed at this facility is simply too high. Now, even when this was a prison back in the 80s and early 90s, it only ever housed 450 people. And in fact, that sparked a riot at one stage in the late 80s in 1986 when 40% of the prisoners here actually rioted because of the conditions. Now, the idea is to house 1,200 people here, the first 400 arriving by September. And if you take a quick look at the facility here behind me, it's not in a great condition. There's a lot of disrepair. There's a lot of windows broken. The roofs look in a poor condition, and lots of bits of furniture and chairs sort of lying around as well. There are new security cameras which residents say have been installed. However, it's unclear exactly who's installed them and for what purpose. Are they to keep people in, or is it to stop people from getting into the facility itself? Residents say they're really going to fight against this. One person saying that they're even considering blocking the road to prevent any asylum seekers from being delivered to this facility. However, for some that I spoke to earlier, it really is the conditions inside this facility that is the biggest concern.
I'm more concerned about how they're going to be housed here, the numbers they're going to be housed in, looking at the site and having come down today and had a real look round it, to me, it doesn't seem fit for purpose, especially not with the only 4 months we've got before 800 are supposed to be arriving.
All our sewage from the estate goes into a treatment plant within the prison grounds. That's under strain at the moment. It's not very reliable. If you add 800 young men to this site, what's that going to do to the system?
Other buildings here that have had asbestos tiles on the ceilings, on the walls, on the floors, and even within the paint that's on some of the walls, that paint also has the ingredient of asbestos.
These people are here for a safer life. They are here to better themselves and try and flee the countries that they're fleeing from, and they're being put in basically something that I wouldn't put my dogs in.
So there are plans for residents to go down to the town hall in Bexhill to express their views this evening. There was supposed to be a meeting of the town council. That's been cancelled because of fears that protesters might want to confront officials and members of the council. However, residents are saying they're going to go down there tonight at 7 o'clock anyway and express their views.
Absolutely. Look, Ray, thank you very, very much. Ray Addison, there are South East of England reporters. We'll bring you the latest there from Bexhill. As I've said as well, it comes on quite a big day for the housing of asylum seekers, some of whom, of course, the government has held their hands up and said just specifically for people who came here illegally across the Channel. Some people would refer to those people as illegal immigrants, on both a barge off the coast of Dorset, which is causing a massive headache for the Tories because there's a bit of infighting there, to say the least. And, of course, at that site in Bexhill, residents' protest there. We'll bring you more on it as we get it. But who's in charge of all of this at the minute? Well, it's the Home Secretary, isn't it? And Suella Braverman is, well, facing a little bit of a strife herself because she's got another huge issue to contend with today. It's been branded the Battle of Waterlooville by us, I think. Braverman is the MP for Fareham in Hampshire, but that constituency is expected to be replaced at the next general election because of boundary changes, OK? So she's going to have to contest it, and she might not have the seat. Let's cross now to our political reporter, Olivia Utley, who is in Fareham. Olivia, look, just be honest, how likely is it that she's going to keep the seat?
Well, I'm afraid a bit of a boring answer, but it looks like it's about 50-50. It's not at all clear that Suella Braverman will win it. She is generally pretty popular with Conservative members around the country, but in Fareham, of course, people like having, on the whole, someone who speaks up for their own local concerns. And, of course, the Home Secretary is a bit busy to be down in Fareham all the time, meeting and greeting people on the street. So there is a sense, at least among the constituency at large, Conservative members who will actually have the vote, a slightly different picture. But there is a sense that they might like someone a bit more vocal, a bit more keen to stand up for them and their concerns in Parliament. Now, Flick Drummond, who is currently the neighbouring MP in Meon Valley and will be contesting against Suella Braverman, is a backbencher, and she is a very vocal backbencher. She has said that if she fails to win this new constituency of Fareham and Waterlooville, then she's not really interested in contesting another seat. She simply wants to stand up for the people of this area. Suella Braverman, of course, would like to be parachuted into a different constituency if she doesn't win this one. So it's going to be really interesting to see what happens. Yes, Suella is popular with the Conservative Party membership generally, but she's not known as a huge sort of charmer. It took her quite a few attempts to get her first seat selection, and she's not really known as someone who will sit down and have a coffee in a tea shop with her local constituents. Will she win tonight? It's not at all clear.
Well, again, we will be bringing that to you live here. Olivia, thank you very much. Olivia Utley, our political reporter. It's the curse, isn't it, of having a whopping great big job right at the heart of government, which is that you probably spend less time in your own constituency. And then when it comes to a situation like this with boundary changes, you've got a straight choice between a backbench MP who really does genuinely care when your bins have been taken out, as well as Braverman, who cares a lot about stopping the madness that's taking place in the Channel. I mean, you could see it happening, couldn't you, that Suella loses there? But we'll have to wait and see, of course. Have to wait and see. Moving on. Donald Trump has claimed the Democrats have totally weaponised law enforcement in the United States as the fallout continues following his historic appearance in court yesterday. And keep your emails coming in about Queen Camilla. Is she your queen? Mrs. Smith thinks no, no, no. Camilla participates in the humiliation of Princess Diana and she will never be her queen. GBViews at gbnews.uk. I'm Patrick Christys on GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, "Nana, stop arguing." I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different. Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching. Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
You're an inspiration to us all.
Click that bit up.
Well, you are.
That's my ringtone. My political ambitions are, those days are gone, I can tell you. She's only teasing. Go on. He's probably going to want to lay down now. I'll give him 2 minutes to have one. Let's respectfully disagree. That's what we like on Jubes and Kerr. Come and join us. GB News, the People's Channel.
Michelle Dewberry, weekday evenings at 6 o'clock.
Start the day with GB News.
We catch up on all the big stories you didn't hear the night before.
And take a look at what the world's talking about this morning. That's right, Monday to Thursdays from 6 o'clock. It's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Straight after breakfast, join us, Bev Turner and Andrew Pearce. We're going to take you through till noon.
We'll be tackling the big topics of the day, including the things that the other channels just won't talk about. If it's happening here. Wake up to mornings on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by 2 of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me.
So anyway.
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We've got a brand new lineup every Saturday night on GB News.
From 6 p.m, I'll give you my unique take on the world today. Then at 7, it's me, Calvin Robinson, with my Common Sense Crusade.
New to GB News is the Saturday 5.
5 times the opinion. Join us every Saturday from 8 p.m. as we debate the week's stories.
With us 4, plus a special guest.
And at 9, of course, it's Mark Dolan Tonight. Brand new Saturday nights on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back, everybody. Now, let's get to Donald Trump. So, he was asked by the judge in his historic court case yesterday not to say anything that could incite violence or create civil unrest. Just a few hours later, Trump made the following statement on social media. Republicans in Congress should defund the Department of Justice and FBI until they come to their senses. The Democrats have totally weaponized law enforcement in our country and are viciously using the abuse of power to interfere with our already under siege elections. Trump clearly meant it because he wrote the entire post there in capital letters. Let's cross now to New York and speak to GB News' political editor, Darren McCaffrey. And Darren, it really has been an absolute hotbed where you are, aren't we? It was an astonishing day yesterday. What's the latest today?
Yeah, day of drama yesterday. Things settled down a little bit today, but behind the scenes, being no doubt that Donald Trump's lawyers are not only trying to fight this case, they're trying to stop it essentially from coming or going to trial altogether. Now, the next appearance by the former US president in court here in New York is expected on December 4th, quite a long way away. But they are already trying to work to see if they can get this case chucked out. They're questioning what the actual evidence that the authorities here in Manhattan have against the former president. Donald Trump also making it clear that he feels that this is way too late, even if they have got evidence that the authorities have not concluded this case in quick enough time, that the statute of limitations has come to an end. And as you said, we had a pretty defiant Donald Trump down in Mar-a-Lago last night, talking about defunding the FBI, talking about how Congress is going to go after what he brands an anti-Trump judge and anti-Trump authorities here in Manhattan. In the short term, politically, this seems to be doing quite well for the former US president. He's raised more than $10 million in the last week. His poll ratings have surged against his rival Republican candidates, but also a sense you get a mood here in America that lots of Americans are also quite bored of the psychodrama around Donald Trump. They do not want to hear about court cases over the next couple of months and years. They're frankly quite bored, and they want this and potentially him just to go away. So America is divided as ever, Patrick.
Darren, thank you. Darren McCaffrey there, GB News' political editor. Well, look, to get a bit more on this story, I'm joined now by someone who actually knows Donald Trump incredibly well. It's Mick Mulvaney, who was the White House Chief of Staff under Trump. So thank you very much. I mean, you've had a much closer look at the guy and an assessment of him that many people will ever have. First and foremost, he's pleaded not guilty to 34 counts of things like falsifying business records, conspiracy for his alleged role in hush money payments to 2 women towards the end of his 2016 presidential campaign. Did you know about this?
No, Patrick, I did not. By the way, it's great to see you. I'm here in New York, across the street, actually, from Trump Tower. I apologize for the background noise. The city is getting back to normal, but it's still a loud place. No, we never discussed this. By the time I was the chief of staff, we were into the Mueller investigation and then straight into the first impeachment. These charges go back long before Trump was in office. The alleged affair with the porn star Stormy Daniels, and then, of course, the hush money payments were from, I think, 2016, 2017. So, no, this is something that never came up with my time.
Yeah. OK, now, when I initially was listening live to Alvin Bragg last night, and I heard some of these things being read out, and about this so-called catch-and-kill scheme, which is to, frankly, look at any misdemeanours alleged that you may have done in the past and try to preempt them becoming a massive news story. And I thought, don't loads of people do that? Why is it so special now that it's Donald Trump? Because this is a tried and tested tactic from a lot of people in the public eye who've done things they regret years ago.
Yeah, and it's completely legal. The charge actually has more to do with the way they accounted for it, not for the fact the payments were made. The payments were taken as a business expense, a legal expense, which is technically wrong, and it's a misdemeanor under New York law. When you marry that to the fact that Trump was a federal candidate at the time and subject to federal campaign rules, those two things together, in the mind of Alvin Bragg, arise to a felony, and that's how we are where we are.
OK, now, I'm aware that you took an incredibly dim view of what happened on January the 6th, the so-called insurrection, the storming of the Capitol. There are concerns about violence in the wake of these charges. Do you predict that there will be violence or not?
No, you get the sense that that was a one-off type of thing. Keep in mind, Trump called for protests 2 weeks ago when he thought he was going to be arrested. No one protested. He called for protests again yesterday. There was more media here present in New York City at the courthouse than there were protesters. There was a small handful of people at Mar-a-Lago. I think even the most ardent Trump supporters now recognize the fact that as much as they like him and want to support him, they're not going to jail for him.
What do you make of the fact that Melania Trump was conspicuous by her absence yesterday at this rally? She did a public show of support with him just a couple of days ago in Mar-a-Lago. She was nowhere to be seen last night.
Yeah, and that didn't go unnoticed. Barron wasn't there either. Of course, he's a teenager now. Ivanka and her husband Jared were not there either. That did not go unnoticed by many commentators.
All right, I think we're just going to have to leave it there, I'm afraid, Mick, just because the sound's a bit bad, but we really do appreciate you taking the time for us. It was Mick Mulvaney there. We just managed to catch in between his movements. He's a very busy man. He's just opposite Trump Tower there, so I'm sure you can all understand that there's a lot going on around him. Mick Mulvaney there, who was the White House Chief of Staff under President Trump. What I was going to ask him is something I'm going to talk about a bit later on, actually, which is Joe Biden's massive snub for our King's coronation. People are saying, well, there's no precedent for it. Well, yeah, all right. I think that's probably eased by the fact that it's been a very long time since the last coronation, hasn't it? But Joe Biden's got it in his locker to go to Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland to talk about the Good Friday Agreement and the anniversary of that. But he's not going to come to our King's coronation. Say what you like about Trump, but he'd have been there. wouldn't he? And I think that does mean a lot. Look, loads more to come between now and 4 p.m. The invites to the coronation, here we go, are calling her Queen Camilla. We are running a Twitter poll on this now. If you go on to @GBNews on Twitter, you will see it. We've pinned it to the top of the page. I want to know, is Camilla your queen? Strong views in the inbox, gbviews@gbnews.uk. A lot of people saying no, and they won't, and I'm quoting now, won't forgive her for what she did to Diana. Your words, not mine. And as dozens of cybercriminals are arrested for stealing personal details, are you one of the tens of thousands of people who've had their bank details stolen? I've got to be honest with you, you might not even know. We'll tell you how you can check very shortly. But right now, it's your headlines with Aaron Armstrong.
It's just after 3:30. I'm Aaron Armstrong in the GB newsroom. 21 people have been convicted of sexual offences against 7 children in Walsall who were younger than 12 when they were abused. West Midlands Police say the offences were committed over a period of almost 10 years. 3 trials have been held over the past 15 months, with reporting restrictions in place until their conclusion. The offenders will be sentenced next month. Saju Chelavalel has admitted killing an NHS nurse and her 2 children in Northamptonshire last December. The 52-year-old pleaded guilty to the murders of Anju Ashok, as well as 6-year-old Jiva Sanju and his sister Janvi, who was 4. They were found with serious injuries at a house in Kettering. Despite efforts to save them, Miss Ashok died at the scene and the children later died in hospital. Nicola Sturgeon's husband, Peter Murrell, has been arrested. Detectives have been searching the SNP's headquarters, collecting evidence, and officers have set up a cordon outside their home. The former chief executive of the Scottish National Party is being questioned as part of an ongoing investigation into finances of the SNP. Police Scotland has been investigating money being spent, which was part of an independence campaign fund. And GB News understands more than 4,000 people have crossed the Channel so far this year. Around 500 illegal migrants arrived in the last 24 hours, with UK authorities intercepting at least 6 small boats today. The Home Office says it's planning for 91,500 people to arrive this year. That's double last year's figure. The government has introduced tougher laws for anyone landing on UK shores illegally by banning them from claiming asylum. TV online, DAB plus radio and on TuneIn. This is GB News.
Direct Bullion sponsors the Finance Report on GB News for gold and silver investment.
Let's get you up to date with a quick look at the markets today. The pound will buy you $1.2471 and 1.1401 euros. The price of gold is £1,621 and 68 pence per ounce, and the FTSE 100 is at 76.58.
Direct Bullion sponsors the Finance Report on GB News for gold and silver investment.
Well, there is some big news concerning the royal family today because for the first time, Camilla has been officially referred to as the Queen rather than Queen Consort. And I saw this story this morning and I thought, I think this might get you lot going. And I was not wrong about that because you should see what's coming through my inbox now. Not a lot of it I can read out, but keep it coming anyway, people. The invite to next month's coronation refers to Their Majesties King Charles III and Queen Camilla. More than 2,000 guests are being invited to attend the coronation on Saturday, May the 6th, and Joe Biden has very kindly offered to give me the ticket that he rejected. No, not really. Joining me now is the royal commentator, Caroline Aston. Caroline, thank you very much. Now, I'm going to read out a couple of emails to you, and I want to get you to react to get a sense of the feeling that I'm getting pushback here against Queen Camilla. No way is she fit to be Queen, says Lynn. I do not accept Camilla as our Queen. Neither do I think Charles should have been allowed to be King. He is a divorcee, and other royals in the past years have not been given that privilege. There's a lot of this in the inbox. What do you make of it?
Well, we'll just point out that Henry VIII had a couple of divorces under his belt, so let's go back that far. Let's look at the facts of this for a start. Ipso facto, she is a queen. You take the rank of your husband when you marry him. I married a Mr., so I was a Mrs., a Lord, a Lady, Earl, Countess, Duke, Duchess, the whole shebang, which of course is the reason why a certain American actress is the Duchess of Sussex.
Yes.
Let's look at it that way. But I do understand strong feeling about this. In fact, if you roll back time to the year 2005, when the Prince of Wales married his longtime love, Mrs. Camilla Parker Bowles, their then principal private secretary, Sir Michael Peat, could see further down the line that this would be a great big juicy bone of contention when Her Majesty the Queen died. And it was mooted then that the title given to the Prince's wife should be Princess Consort. But in the last 18 years, and in fact it's their wedding anniversary on Sunday, I think you could say that Charles's wife, then Duchess of Cornwall, has done all she can to support him. But then you come into the personalities. You come into the vilification that followed the breakdown of the Wales's marriage, the pelting with bread rolls in supermarkets, the trolling, all the stuff that was said about it. People have long memories, and it was inevitable that this would stir up the mud and bring back many memories, many of them not terribly positive, a hard time.
Well, that's it. We, as I've said, I've got a poll running live on our Twitter page now at GB News. Do you accept Camilla as Queen? 53.6% yes, 39.1% no, 7.3% not sure. So there we go. We'll have to wait and see if they make their minds up over the course of this show. But look, realistically, does this all centre around the fact that some people out there have not forgiven her for what went on while Charles was still married to Diana?
Undoubtedly. I mean, I think this was to be expected. I mean, Diana brought glamour, she brought care. She, if you like, was this modernising influence in a royal family that desperately needed the sprinkle of stardust that she brought. She got down on the level with people. She worked with the disestablished, people that were not so-called popular causes. She seared herself on the heart and the memory of a nation. And of course, when the news broke that there were goings-on, and let's be honest, not just by Prince Charles, King Charles III, but also Diana herself had relationships outside her marriage too. It became a very publicly fought war. But of course, there are some problems here. King Charles is the Supreme Governor of the Church of England. He's a divorcee, marrying a divorced woman. That's an issue there. But I would also say this, really, what a shame that we can't roll back time. The man did not have the courage or whatever to marry, obviously, the love of his life when he could have done. What a lot of tragedy and pain would have been avoided at every level.
It's very true. Look, Caroline, thank you very, very much. It's Caroline Aston there, who's a royal commentator. Now, ladies and gents, I'm going to be returning to this each hour in this show. I think it's a big story for you, and it is really kicking off in the inbox. Ronald's piped in now in staunch defence of Camilla, saying, come on, people, stop living in the past. Marriages break up, new partners arrive on the scene, and life must go on. Do you accept Camilla as your queen? There are a few little rumblings as well about, well, you know, the Queen's, our old Queen now, it's going to get confusing this, isn't it? Our old Queen said that she wanted us to be Queen Consort. Is this in her wishes, etc.? So we'll be talking about all this. But keep your views coming in. It's already kicked off. GBviews at gbnews.uk. Do you accept Camilla as your queen? Right, moving on. It's been branded now as the biggest treatment disaster in NHS history. That's right, and that is, I imagine, quite a long list, actually. There's a big update today on the infected blood scandal, which has affected an untold amount of people and their future generations as well. I'm Patrick Christys on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it. Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage. Here on GB News, we will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat. Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. I campaigned in the largest democratic vote in our island story. I know this country has so much to be proud of. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better. The wisdom of the nation is in its people. Vox Populi, Vox Dei. That's why I'm joining the People's Channel. Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
Okay, welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Just a little teaser ahead. I think I am about to tell you some quite big news in relation to that migrant barge off the coast of Dorset. So I'll bring you more on that in just a couple of minutes, fingers crossed, as and when we get all that copper-bottomed, as they say. But law enforcement agencies in the UK and around the world have arrested dozens of cyber criminals responsible for defrauding millions of people. In a series of raids across the UK, the US and Europe, officers swooped to shut down Genesis Market. It's a platform used by cyber fraudsters. Now, I know a lot of this might seem like it's going over your head, but the shocking reality is that you actually might not know that you've been defrauded as a part of this, or that your details have been stolen. So this is why we wanted to bring it to your attention, because as part of the investigation, the National Crime Agency identified hundreds of UK-based users of the platform, with a total of 24 people being arrested. And the bust involved 17 countries and was led by the FBI and the Dutch National Police. You will be staggered to know how easy it is to lose your details, have them stolen, is the best way of putting it, for someone to use them, and for you to not know about it. To break this down further, I am joined by the Director of Threat Leadership at the National Crime Agency. It's Rob Jones. Rob, thank you very much. Great to have you on the show, and it's a fascinating story to get stuck into here. First and foremost, what's actually happened then? Because this is a big, big international operation that could affect millions.
Thank you. So with international partners, we've been able to take action against one of the most significant criminal marketplaces, compromised credentials, that's been available online. It's been available for some time on the open web and dark web. And to give you an idea of the scale, there's been, we assess 80 million stolen credentials available on there, with up to 2 million individuals victimised, and that's tens of thousands of victims in the UK, and hundreds of individuals in the UK who've taken advantage of the service to commit crime, potentially. And we began to hold them to account today with the 24 arrests and 31 searches that you're talking about, with colleagues in policing from the regional organised crime cyber units.
People, I think understandably, will be very worried listening to this story now and thinking, oh, gosh, have I had my details stolen? I mean, how can they check?
So there is a link on the NCA website which you can go to, which is Check Your Hack, which is being hosted by our colleagues in the Dutch National Police. You can also get really good advice in relation to good cyber security from the National Cyber Security Centre or ncsc.gov.uk. And simple things will keep you safe. Good complex passwords, update your operating system, and keep an eye on your transactions and look out for anything that's out of the ordinary, and you will very quickly start to notice what's going on. There's one other thing which fixes your device to transactions, which is called two-factor authentication, which I would recommend that everybody switch on.
I'm just going to ask you, if you don't mind, just to hang there for me for a second, Rob, please. I'm very sorry about this. We just had a bit of breaking news. I'll go back to Rob. The government has signed a deal to house up to 500 asylum seekers on a barge in Portland Harbour in Dorset. The contract will see the 93-metre-long Bibby Stockholm come under Home Office control, so it's happening. Parent company Bibby Marine has told GB News that the barge is still docked in Genoa in Italy. And in a statement to GB News, the company added the Bibby Stockholm offers ensuite rooms, all with windows, which can be configured to suit clients' needs. Each room has a bed, a desk, storage and ensuite facilities. On board, there is a laundry, canteen and social spaces. And the Bibby Stockholm has been refurbished and has comfortably housed workers from various industries, easy for me to say, including construction, marine and the armed forces over the years. Tory-run Dorset Council is opposed to the use of Portland Harbour as the site for the plans, with local MP Richard Drack saying that he is working to get the plan consigned to the dustbin. The announcement that the barge will be used is part of a pledge by Rishi Sunak's government to end the controversial practice of housing asylum seekers in hotel accommodation, which is currently costing the taxpayer £7 million a day. However, it's believed that the Bibby Stockholm will cost £20,000 a day to run. So that big breaking news, will return to it. It's official. The government has signed a deal to house migrants on that barge, which is due to be moored in Dorset, despite massive local opposition from Tories as well, it must be said, and indeed the Mayor. So, look, we'll bring you more on that as when we get it. Back to Rob now. Yes, that's right. So Rob Jones here from the National Crime Agency. There is a call for who's from the cybercrime scam story that we had on earlier on. I believe, yeah, Rob, there you are. Thank you very much, Rob. Sorry about that. So, look, how will people be aware as to whether or not they've actually had their details pinched? You were saying that there is a website they can go and check. Is that right?
That's correct, yes. So on the NCA website, you can see a link to check your hack, and that will allow you to access the website hosted by the Dutch National Police, where you can input details to see whether you may have been a victim. And I would also recommend that people look at the really good advice that's available at ncsc.gov.uk if you are concerned that you might have been compromised and your credentials could have been stolen and your accounts taken over.
OK, all right. Now, look, is this the kind of thing, though, that mainly targets, vulnerable people? I'm quite keen to find out how people had their details stolen, because everything's online now. I'm worried about it on my phone. I tap in and tap out on everything now. I don't even remember the last time I used my bank card. I think increasingly a lot of people are doing that. Is this a risk?
It is a risk, but it's a risk you can mitigate with very straightforward advice. So keep your operating system up to date. As soon as the security patch is available, whatever operating system you're on, adopt it. So keep your software up to date, use complex passwords, use two-factor authentication, and keep an eye on your transactions, and you can keep yourself safe from this type of attack. It isn't just vulnerable people, it's everybody. You know, online fraud is probably the majority of the fraud offences that are committed, and that's about 41% of all reported crime at the moment. So this is right across society. You don't have to exhibit vulnerability to be caught out, but you can prevent it with good, simple steps that you can take.
One more with you now. If people want their money back, so they look at their bank accounts and they realise that something's happened, OK, can they get in touch with you guys and the police and go, look, I didn't realise this, I had a different account that I never normally look at, and 10 grand's gone. What can they do?
So if you think you've been a victim of a crime, you should report that to Action Fraud, and it will go from there. There is no guarantee you will get your money back. The banks in the UK act very responsibly, but report the crime to Action Fraud and go from there.
All right, look, Rob, thank you very much. Absolute pleasure. And cheers for holding on the line while we broke that news as well. Rob Jones there, Director of Threat Leadership at the NCA. So millions of people were defrauded, have been defrauded, hopefully no longer. But the NCA, the National Crime Agency, the FBI, Dutch authorities, international police as well, have cracked a big ring there of cyber fraudsters. So go and check your bank accounts, make sure that's not you. And if it is you, contact Action Fraud, and always, of course, be very, very careful who you give your details to and where you dish them out. Moving on. The government has signed that deal now to house up to 500 asylum seekers on the barge in Portland in Dorset. So we'll be returning to that throughout the course of the show. Make sure that you keep your eyes and ears peeled. We will be giving you more information as we get it. That just broke moments ago. But there is a call today for a wider compensation scheme for victims of what's thought of as the worst treatment disaster in NHS history. More than 2,000 people died and thousands more suffered lifelong injuries after contaminated blood was used for transfusions in the 1970s and 1980s. Thousands of the victims received interim compensation payments of £100,000, but the chair of the public inquiry has today recommended that the compensation scheme should go further, providing compensation for family members of victims, including parents who lost children or those who were orphaned as a result. Joining me now is Des Collins, partner at Collins Solicitors. Des, thank you very much. Great to have you on the show. This is an absolutely catastrophic story where people were infected with diseases and viruses from infected blood, and that has an absolutely devastating lifelong impact on them and their wider families. What's the latest then? Can people get more compensation?
They will be entitled to more compensation once this scheme kicks in. What happened last year was that the government commissioned a report, their own internal report from Sir Robert Francis. He recommended compensation on a statutory basis, effectively, and that report has now been considered by the chair to the infected blood inquiry. He's produced internal report this morning, which effectively endorses the Robert Francis report. So we now have two reports which are available to the government, one having been commissioned direct and one as a result of the government having set up the public inquiry. Both recommend full compensation, and the victims will be pushing the government to implement the inquiry's recommendations immediately.
Can I just say, from a moral perspective, I absolutely cannot believe that it's taking this much of a fight to get compensation for people who were being treated for a variety of different things, needed blood transfusions, and were given blood that was contaminated with HIV, hepatitis C, other issues as well. I mean, how on earth is it such a fight to get compensation for these people?
It's been a fight because successive administrations would not admit responsibility. When it first happened, and this is going back to the 80s, and there was litigation at the back end of the 80s into the 90s, when it first happened, the response was put the wagons in a circle, don't admit anything if you don't have to. Then a policy was developed which ran along the lines of, we won't pay compensation because we've done everything reasonably possible to ensure the safety of the victims. Well, that line, the line which was taken, had no basis in reality. But once it had been adopted at that time, successive administrations didn't go back to the reality of saying, well, had we done everything wrong? No, they just said, well, hang on, we've inherited this line to take. So one after another, everyone took the same line.
Des, thank you very much. Great to have you on the show and great to have your insight. Des Collins there, who's senior partner at Collins Solicitors. Yeah, look, earlier today, GB News spoke to Richard Warwick, who is one of the victims of this contaminated blood scandal, and let's hear what he had to say.
And as a child of about 10 or 11 years old, I was infected with hepatitis B, hepatitis C and HIV. So I got the full monty of infections through my treatment for haemophilia. It's defined every aspect of my life, and that of my wife as well. It's prevented us from having a family, being able to hold down a meaningful job and meaningful employment. It's prevented me from getting life insurance, travel insurance, and every other thing a healthy adult would be able to obtain, and that, of course, includes a pension. So, as well as the financial implications, it's essentially destroyed my health. I've been on medication since I was 16 years old.
Look, that's the impact, just some of the impact that it has had on people's lives. Richard Warwick there, one of the victims of that contaminated blood scandal. The government has responded to today's report, and their statement reads, the infected blood scandal should never have happened. The report will help us meet our shared objective to be able to respond quickly when the inquiry's final report is published in the autumn. OK, so, big breaking news in the last 10 minutes. We brought that to you live here, didn't we? The government has signed a deal to house up to 500 asylum seekers on a barge in Portland Harbour in Dorset. Massive controversy around that. And there's big news from Scotland today. Oh, yes. Peter Murrell, who's the husband of former SNP leader Nicola Sturgeon, has been arrested as part of a police investigation into the party's finances. I'm Patrick Christys. This is GB News. We are Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the people's channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christys, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News has its own late-night paper preview show, Headliners, where comedians take you through the next day's top news stories. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper, we've got it covered for you. Headliners, every night at 11 p.m, and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
I'm Michael Portillo. Join me on GB News on a Sunday morning for topical discussion, debate, arts and culture, and sometimes even ethical dilemmas.
I don't always agree with you, Michael.
Michael Portillo, Sundays on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Well, a very good afternoon, everybody. It's 4 o'clock and you're with me, Patrick Christys, on GB News. It's a very fast-moving show today. Breaking news left, right and centre. Here's what we've just had through. The government has put pen to paper on a deal to house 500 migrants on a barge off the coast of Dorset. Massive opposition. We will have a closer look at their accommodation shortly. This was some other breaking news as well, deeply disturbing this. West Midlands' largest ever child sexual abuse investigation. 21 people have now been convicted. It is just absolutely deplorable. We'll give you the latest on all of that. North of the border in Scotland, though, Nicola Sturgeon's husband has been arrested as part of a probe into the SNP's finances. Who'd have thunk it? Hey, we'll talk to you in more detail. And as well, Queen Camilla. OK, so it's been announced for the first time that Camilla is actually Queen, not Queen Consort. I've been asking you whether or not Camilla is your Queen. We've got a poll on that on GB News' Twitter now, at GB News. Is Camilla your Queen? I'm Patrick Christys. Strap yourselves in. It's going to be a big hour. Yes, GBviews at gbnews.uk is that email address. Is Camilla your Queen? That's one we'll go off. Oh, yeah, and of course, reactions. That big breaker that we just had there. About 500 migrants are going to be living on a barge off the coast of Dorset. So there we go. GBviews at gbnews.uk. What do you make of both of those things? But right now, it's your headlines with Aaron Armstrong.
It's 4:15. Good afternoon to you. I'm Aaron Armstrong in the GB Newsroom. As we've just been hearing, some breaking news. The government has signed a deal to house asylum seekers on a barge in Dorset. The Home Office say the Bibby Stockholm, which can house around 500 people, will provide basic and functional accommodation. as well as around-the-clock security to minimise the disruption to local communities. The move, designed to free up hotels, will reportedly cost taxpayers more than £20,000 per day. The local district council is seeking a judicial review to stop the plans. 21 people have been convicted of sexual offences against 7 children in Walsall who were younger than 12 when they were abused. West Midlands Police says the offences were committed over a period of almost 10 years. 3 trials have been held over the last 15 months with reporting restrictions in place until their conclusion. The offenders will be sentenced next month. A man has admitted killing his wife and children in Northamptonshire. Saju Chalavalal pleaded guilty to the murders of Anju Ashok, as well as 6-year-old Jiva Sanju and his sister Janvi, who are 4. They were found with serious injuries at a house in Kettering last December. Despite efforts to save them, Miss Ashok died at the scene and the children later died in hospital. Nicola Sturgeon's husband, Peter Murrell, has been arrested. Detectives are currently searching the SNP's headquarters, collecting evidence, and officers have set up a cordon outside their home. The former chief executive of the Scottish National Party is being questioned as part of an ongoing investigation into finances of the party. Police Scotland has been investigating money being spent, which was part of an independent campaign fund. Scotland's new First Minister, Humza Yousaf, says the SNP is fully cooperating with the investigation.
Will have questions. They will have. There will be some concerns. Our party membership, of course, will have concerns too. So what I can commit to is party leaders that we want to be absolutely transparent. That's why I asked NEC to agree to a review around governance and transparency, and also to make sure it has some external input, which I think is really, really important to give confidence, not just to our party members, but to anybody in the public that might have some concerns too.
The chairman of the blood inquiry says compensation for victims should be extended. Thousands of patients were infected with HIV and hepatitis C through contaminated products in the 1970s and 80s. An independent inquiry has set out its second interim report. Last year, it recommended victims of the contaminated blood scandal receive interim compensation of £100,000. Inquiry chairman Sir Brian Langstaff has described it as the biggest treatment disaster in the NHS.
My conclusion is that wrongs were done at individual, collective and systemic levels. Today is an important milestone on the journey to establish what happened and why, to learn the lessons of the past and to make amends as much as we can as a nation.
Well, 2 victims of the scandal have said the report proves there were questions to answer.
We all welcome Sir Brian's interim report. I think it covers everything that all of the groups have been saying over the years. And it's good to see that we are now being believed and we're not hitting our head up against a brick wall as we have done in the past.
They were wronged, we were wronged, all the families were wronged, and that has to be put right. And the financial packages set down by Sir Brian today goes in some way to right that wrong.
Raids have been staged across the UK as part of an international cyber security sting. The National Crime Agency estimates the personal data of tens of thousands of Britons was stolen by the website Genesis Market, which has now been taken offline. 80 million sets of credentials have been illegally acquired from sites including online banking, shopping and social media, and they were being sold for as little as 56 pence per entry. Digital fingerprints from victims' devices were also on offer. 24 suspected users of the site have been arrested in the UK. The Home Secretary will face fellow Conservative Flick Drummond in a party vote today as they contest selection for the new constituency of Fareham and Waterlooville. Boundary changes will see the 2 Hampshire MPs compete to represent the Conservatives for the proposed new seat at the next election. Now, voters have been giving us their views on Suella Braverman.
What do I make of her?
Yeah.
Not a lot, really.
Not a lot.
Don't think she does a lot for the community around here. She's a mouthpiece on TV, I know that much.
Well, she's my MP, but I don't support her party.
I think she's doing a great job. Yeah, really impressed with what she's doing. She's on the right track. Got her mindset right for the country and immigration, and yeah, great Home Secretary.
No. She's the Home Secretary.
we should.
There you go. This is GB News. More on all the big stories whenever it happens. But for now, it's back to Patrick.
Huge news to kick-start with. We broke it just a short time ago. It's a major development in the battle to, well, supposedly solve the migrant crisis. The government has signed a deal to house up to 500 asylum seekers on a barge in Portland Harbour in Dorset. The contract will see the 93-metre-long Bibby Stockholm come under Home Office control. The Home Office says that the barge will accommodate about 500 single adult males whilst their asylum claims are being processed. Tory-run Dorset Council is opposed to the use of Portland Harbour as the site for the plans, and local MP, Tory again Richard Drax, saying that he is working to get the plan consigned to the dustbin. So there we go, not necessarily a positive reaction. Immigration Minister Robert Jenrick said the Home Secretary and I have been clear that the use of expensive hotels to house those making unnecessary and dangerous journeys must stop. We will not elevate the interests of illegal migrants over the British people. We are elected to serve. We have to use alternative accommodation, he goes on, as our European neighbours are doing, including the use of barges and ferries to save the British taxpayer money and to prevent the UK becoming a magnet for asylum shoppers in Europe. All accommodation will meet our legal obligations, and we will work closely with the local community to address their concerns, including through financial support. Lots of reaction to this already. Annie says, well, that should take care of the 500 people who will no doubt arrive here today then. And that is the overwhelming response so far. 500 people, is that just what rocks up every single day? Joining me now, though, from Bexhill is GB News' South East of England reporter Ray Addison, because we've had the barge news, but this is other news now, isn't it, Ray? Because you are obviously at the site of a proposed disused prison site, which is going to be used to house, one would imagine, again, mostly single men who've arrived across the Channel, and they're going to be protests there, as you understand it.
Well, absolutely, Patrick. Yes, there's going to be up to 1,200 single male migrants housed here at the Northeye facility here in the quite sleepy seaside town of Bexhill, and it has raised concerns among members of the public. There are rows of houses right next to this facility which has had different uses over the years. It's been a prison, an RAF base, it's been a training facility for the UAE government as well, and a lot of concerns among residents about not only the safety of themselves and their families and their local communities, but also of the men that will be housed in this facility because it is in such a state of disrepair. Now, this announcement was made last week. Of course, today we're hearing about this initiative. Now, the government has signed a deal to house up to 500 asylum seekers on a barge. It's going to be moored, if that's the right term, in Portland Harbour in Dorset, and it's the Bibby Stockholm. Now, this has been used over the years for a number of different uses. It's been housed workers from various industries, including the construction sector, the marine sector, and the armed forces as well. It's 93 metres long, and its parent company, Bibby Marine, is saying that it's been refurbished for this purpose. It offers ensuite rooms, all with windows. Each room has a bed, a desk, it's got storage and ensuite facilities as well. And on board that barge, there will be a laundry, a canteen and social spaces as well. And of course, this is all part of the government's pledge, Patrick, as you were saying, to stop housing asylum seekers in hotels. We know that's been costing around £7 million a day. The Bibby Stockholm, meanwhile, will be costing about £20,000 a day to run. So presumably considerably less than individual housing for migrants in hotels. Now, of course, as you were saying, Patrick, the Immigration Minister, Robert Jenrick, has issued a statement in the last hour or so saying the Home Secretary and I have been clear that the use of expensive hotels is unnecessary. It's dangerous, he says, and it must stop in the interest not just of the British public, but of illegal migrants to this country as well. Now, this is just the latest of alternative accommodation options that have been considered and signed up, as our European neighbours are doing. Robert Jenrick says the use of barges and ferries has been used by other countries, and it will, they believe, save British taxpayers money and prevent the UK becoming, Mr. Jenrick says, a magnet for asylum shoppers in Europe. Now, all accommodation, according to this statement, will meet the UK's legal obligations, and they're going to be working closely, they say, with the local community as well to address any concerns, including through financial support. We've heard that here in Bexhill as well. More financial support for members, for local councils to help members of the community and help these new immigrants coming here to asylum accommodation integrate into the community. Now, of course, the Tory-run Dorset Council is opposed to the use of Portland Harbour as a site for the plans for this barge. And as you were saying, Patrick, local MP Richard Drax saying he will work to get this plan consigned to the dustbin.
Yeah, look, Ray, thank you very, very much. Ray Addison there, who's given us the double whammy of the latest breaking migrant news there. He's our South East of England reporter. He's been at the site in Bexhill, massive controversy there. The latest, as you can see on your screens, is the government signs a migrants barge deal. This barge is going to house 500 migrants. It's off the coast of Dorset in Portland Harbour. I have had one email in, just very quickly on this, from a chap who claims to be living near there. He's called Chris. He says, I'm disgusted with my fellow Dorset folk. Of course, we should accept our share of migrants, and what possible objection could there be if they are offshore anyway? And look, it's not the overwhelming view in my inbox, that's fair to say, and there is huge amounts of local opposition from the MP, the local council, the mayor, residents groups and charities to this. How would you feel, though? The argument is that it is offshore, technically, offshore. So is it going to be the same as having a hotel in your area, which I dare say Dorset probably already has, because most other parts do as well. But to shed some more light on this, I'm joined by Stephen Wolfe, who's the director at the Centre for Migration and Economic Prosperity. Stephen, a couple of key lines have stood out for me on this. That boat is only going to house young single men. The detention centre is only going to house young single men. Is this all just a bit of a fudge, where they're going to put the young single men who cross the channel into detention centres a bit like this, and they're going to have women and children in hotels? And actually, this isn't going to stop the use of hotels at all.
Well, I don't think they can stop the use of hotels, Patrick, and you're probably right. The way that's very clearly set out in the Illegal Immigration Act is that young single men is the target of the government, and they are going to be faced by removal after 28 days, no ability, removal to Rwanda, no ability to be able to claim asylum. But the government has made it very clear that for women and children, they will actually look at different routes for them and being able to make sure that they're safe. This all comes back when we had our last interview, and I mentioned at the time that following a meeting with the Home Office and a briefing that they gave, that they would be releasing further information, firstly about accommodation, increased accommodation, and next, what about the planes to remove these young, fit men, who is the target. And what you can see from this, Patrick, this is now ramped up to about 5,000, with RAF Wethersfield, RAF Scampton, Dorsey, and now Bibby. All of those added together is about 5,000. And our calculations just on Bibby alone is that's going to save about £11 million a year for the taxpayer.
So that could save £11 million a year for the taxpayer. I am seeing some really interesting data that's come through in The Spectator, actually, about the amount of Albanians who have stopped making the journey across the Channel. And this is down drastically in the thousands from this time last year, and flights with deportees apparently are now leaving weekly for Albania. They are saying that this is eroding the incentive to pay anywhere between £3 and £8 grand to a human trafficker to get you there. So that could be good news. Reading between the lines, Stephen, are these new prison camp detention centres, RAF bases, and now a boat going to be used as, hopefully, short-term detention centres for fast-paced processing, which could lead in deportations either back to their home country or to Rwanda? This is not a long-term accommodation thing, because we've seen people in hotels for years.
No, you're absolutely right. There is a dual strategy that's been undertaken by the Home Office. The first of the strategy is to deal with the 51,000 that are currently in hotels. And you've seen an increase in staff being brought in to deal with the asylum claims, greater technology, changes of the legislation. But specifically these accommodations that we have just mentioned is about the second stream of that strategy by the government, which is to make sure those who are coming across the Channel know fully well they won't get to the hotels across the rest of the country unless they're children and women. If they're young men, which is about 80% of them, then you're going to be swiftly dealt with. 28 days, you will have detention. 28 days, your claim will be rejected here in the UK, but you'll be flown to Rwanda, where your assessment will be made there. So let's make it clear to you and the people smugglers. If you come over on a boat, you're going into a barge, an RAF camp, or someone like Dorsey, then you'll be deported or removed. Sorry, the wrong use of phrase deported there. Removed to Rwanda. And I believe other countries will come on stream soon. Your assessment will be there. That is a real good incentive to destroy the model of the people smugglers.
Really interesting, Stephen. Thank you very much for your insight on that. And I know we're going to talk again very soon. Stephen Wolfe there is the director at the Centre for Migration and Economic Prosperity. Just weigh that up then. If we've got these sites, these news sites that we keep banging on about, it's going to house around 5,000 almost exclusively young men. And if 80% of those are essentially going to be scheduled for removal, potentially, then actually that does free up a lot of the space for genuine asylum seekers, for women and children, and also could at the same time potentially crack the actual human trafficking model. Of course, that's the best case scenario, but we'll have to wait and see. Right, we're moving on from that now because, well, we're not actually quite. We're going to hear from Richard Drax, who's the MP for South Dorset, where the barge will be stationed. He is very worried about the impact that housing migrants, he's dead against this, he's very worried about the impact that this barge is going to have on his local area.
There's two areas of concern that we have. One is in the port itself, which is a highly, highly restricted area. You're going to have 500, we don't know who they are, if it's young men, in effect, a sort of quasi-prison, because they're only going to be allowed out on a bus. We don't know where the bus will go to. We don't know whether they're going to be dropped. We don't know whether someone will monitor them. We don't even know if they'll get back to the pickup point and get back to where they are incarcerated. This port, as I've explained, with its highly restricted area, is going to have trouble enough to look after these migrants. And as I said, outside, there'll be no control over where they go, what they do in a very sensitive seaside town. There are other ports, other places, and you may accuse me of being a NIMBY, but this port is not an appropriate place.
Yeah, this argument's not going to go away anytime soon, and by all means, people of Dorset, get in touch with me. Are you a bit of a NIMBY for not wanting this in your backyard, given that it is technically offshore and that something needs to be done? And are you going to be playing your part for the future of Britain and their deterrent for people coming across the channel? Maybe you just absolutely don't want it there. Let me know. But yes, moving on now, a very serious story this, because the biggest investigation into child sex abuse in the West Midlands has ended with 21 people being convicted. The offending against 7 children who were 12 years old or younger took place over nearly a decade in Walsall and Wolverhampton. So Paul Hawkins joins me in the studio now, national reporter Paul Hawkins. Paul, what is the latest, please?
So this is 22 people were prosecuted and 21 convicted in this. In fact, so many people were had to be prosecuted that they was held over 3 trials. These offences, child sexual abuse, child sex offences, ranging in ages from 22 to 72 years old. Of those 21 convicted, 13 were men, 8 were women, and the jail sentences ranging from 28 months to life. 4 are still to be sentenced, and these offences against 7 children who were aged 12 years or younger in Walsall and in Wolverhampton. West Midlands Police are the 3rd biggest police force in the UK. This is their biggest ever child sexual abuse investigation. The abuse came to light after one of the victims visited hospital, and then it unravelled, and various agencies got involved. So this is a huge investigation. Detective Superintendent Paul Drover says this is some of the most shocking abuse that I've seen in my career. They have been through a significant amounts of trauma. There is a report that is due to be published by the Walsall Safeguarding Children's Board into whether there could have been earlier interventions. That's due to be published soon. Although the chair of that board, Sally Hodges, has said there is no room for complacency, but we have confidence in the professional practice to identify and respond to concerns or risk relating to sexual abuse. And in the week when Suella Braverman is talking about the ethnicity of grooming gangs. It's notable that all of the offenders are white. There are some women as well. She said this week the perpetrators are groups of men, almost all British Pakistani. There was some blowback against those comments. For example, Sir Peter Wanless, Chief Executive of the NSPCC, said that perpetrators do not just come from one background, warning it was really important that by raising an issue such as race, we don't create other blind spots. So people who take that viewpoint will point to this white grooming gang case, if we can call it that, and say, look, it's not just British Pakistani men, it's women, and they do come from other backgrounds. But a huge investigation, and the children themselves, some of them being cared for by the Walsall Safeguarding Children's Board at the moment, and undergoing that significant treatment, process, therapy to try and deal with the trauma that they've been through.
Yeah, look, Paul, thank you very much. Paul Hawkins, now our national reporter, bringing you the latest on, well, it's an absolutely massive case. I'm joined now by Marilyn Hawes, who's Director and CEO of Freedom from Abuse. Marilyn, great to have you on the show, although obviously under incredibly bleak circumstances. This is just remarkable news. So 21 people convicted of the largest child sexual abuse investigation that West Midlands Police has ever conducted. I mean, it is just deplorable, isn't it?
Well, it's shocking, but I mean, I cease to be shocked because I see this every day. But I think I would not call this, personally, I would not call this a grooming gang. I would call this a very close-knit paedophile ring. When you look at the names, and well done to the hospital, it was one victim and they picked up on it and they followed through. And so often these cases fall over because the police don't take it seriously or the Safeguarding Board doesn't take it seriously. Be interesting to see their report if it could have been noticed earlier. Probably so, if because these children, probably most of them would have been at school. So what did the schools notice? What did the schools report? And what may have been ignored by the social services? Because we hear that all the time. But courage, great courage, and well done to those people. But when you've got the 8 women, which is a sure, good thing for people to note that women do this too. But when you look at the names, Patrick, it is, I believe, a very close-knit paedophile ring. You've got 5 people with the same name and another 6 with the same name. You've got 2 with the same name and addresses and a couple of neighbours that live nearby. You've got another 2 with the same name and another 2 with the same name, with the same address, and a neighbour that lived next door. I mean, this is a very, very close-knit circle ring.
It does appear...
But, children, I mean... How much must these children have been abused? You think it's over 10 years, there's 7 children and that number of people. Absolutely horrific. But this won't be a one-off. It's in plain sight. It's as common as cornflakes. And I just don't know what else to say. This is how it is, Patrick. Unfortunately, this is how it is. And people need to be more observant about behaviours and how children look and what goes on, and stop sticking their head in the sand because it is everywhere.
Yeah, look, Marilyn, thank you very, very much. Great to have you on the show and have your kind of wisdom in this area as well. It is much appreciated to have your input. That's Marilyn Hawes. He's Director and CEO of Freedom from Abuse. He does an incredible amount of work, actually, for children who have suffered the most appalling levels of mistreatment. But I'm going to bring you now some news that just broke in the last few minutes. It has been a show full of breaking news, hasn't it? 6 Just Stop Oil protesters have been found guilty of disrupting traffic near the Natural History Museum during a protest in central London. GB News viewers will now be able to see footage of their protests last year. Good grief, there we are. And they've been convicted of willful obstruction of the highway following a 2-day trial at Westminster Magistrates Court. They were among 17 people who sat on a junction on October the 19th, causing traffic queues in both directions of the dual carriageway. It was the 19th consecutive day of disruption. Grief, yes, do you remember that? 19th consecutive day of disruption in the capital caused by Just Stop Oil. That was when they were really in their pomp, gluing themselves to absolutely everything, wasn't they? Anyway, it's official. The Queen Consort has now become Queen Camilla after the coronation. I've been asking you whether or not Camilla is your queen. We have a Twitter poll on this at the moment, at GB News on Twitter. And so far, 53% of you say yes. Can we do our best to try and replicate the Brexit referendum as well, please? And the result of the Scottish First Minister as well. 48% would be an absolute treat if we can get it to that. I'm Patrick Christys on GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's
all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, no, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment.
I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Dubes and Co.
You're an inspiration to us all.
Clip that bit off.
Well, you are.
That's my ringtone. My political ambitions those days are gone, I can tell you.
She's only teasing. Go on.
He's probably going to want to lay down now. I'll give him 2 minutes to have one. Let's respectfully disagree. That's what we like on Dubes and Co. Come and join us. GB News, the People's Channel.
Michelle Dewberry, weekday evenings at 6 o'clock.
Start the day with GB News.
We catch up on all the big stories you didn't hear the night before.
And take a look at what the world's talking about this morning. That's right, Monday to Thursdays from 6 o'clock. It's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Straight after breakfast, join us, Bev Turner and Andrew Pearce. We're going to take you through till noon.
We'll be tackling the big topics of the day, including the things that the other channels just won't talk about. If it's happening here. Wake up to mornings on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by 2 of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me. So anyway.
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We've got a brand new lineup every Saturday night on GB News.
From 6 p.m, I'll give you my unique take on the world today.
Then at 7, it's me, Calvin Robinson, with my Common Sense Crusade.
New to GB News is the Saturday 5.
5 times the opinion. Join us every Saturday from 8 p.m. as we debate the week's stories.
With us 4, plus a special guest.
And at 9, of course, it's Mark Dolan Tonight. Brand new Saturday nights on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Lots more still to come between now and 5 p.m. And the man who's about to take charge of Europe's biggest teaching union says, get this, the UK is a brutally racist state and says that strikes are about more than pay, so there needs to be a total reorganisation of society. Good lad, that bodes well. And the UK's car market is finally showing signs of coming to life. Are you in the market for a new car? Might be worth you waiting a little while. We'll tell you why shortly. Look, we've got a load of the breaking news to pack through as well. The government has put pen to paper on a big deal to put 500 migrants on a barge off the coast of Dorset. That has been incredibly controversial. Just Stop Oil have just been found guilty of some stuff as well. We can't move for breaking news on this show. Right now, though, it's your headlines with Aaron Armstrong.
Hi there, it is 4:30. I'm Aaron Armstrong in the GB newsroom. As you have just been hearing, the government has signed a deal to house asylum seekers on a barge off the coast of Dorset. Rishi Sunak has defended the plans, insisting it will save taxpayers around £6 million per day by removing migrants from hotels. The Home Office says the Bibby Stockholm, which can accommodate around 500 people, will provide basic but functional facilities. It will also have around-the-clock security to minimise disruption to local communities. However, the local district council is seeking a judicial review to stop the plan. 21 people have been convicted of sexual offences against 7 children in Walsall. They were younger than 12 at the time they were abused. West Midlands Police say the offences were committed over a period of almost 10 years. 3 trials have been held over the past 15 months, with reporting restrictions in place until their conclusion. The offenders will be sentenced next month. Saju Chelavalal has admitted killing his wife and their 2 children in Northamptonshire. The 52-year-old pleaded guilty to the murders of Anju Ashok, as well as 6-year-old Jiva Sanju and his sister Janvi. She was 4. They were found with serious injuries at a house in Kettering in December. The judge said he now faces a life sentence. Nicola Sturgeon's husband, Peter Murrell, has been arrested. Detectives have been searching the SNP's headquarters, collecting evidence, and officers have set up a cordon outside their home. The former chief executive of the Scottish National Party is being questioned as part of an ongoing investigation into the finances of the SNP. Police Scotland has been investigating money being spent, which was part of an independence campaign fund. TV, online, DAB+ radio, and on TuneIn. This is GB News. Now back to Patrick.
Is Camilla your queen? There's big news concerning the royal family today, and for the first time, Camilla has been referred to as just the Queen rather than Queen Consort in official statements. The official invite to next month's coronation refers to Their Majesties King Charles III and Queen Camilla. More than 2,000 guests are being invited to attend the coronation on Saturday, May the 6th. Some of them, like Joe Biden, decided to say no to that. Joining me now, though, is Bruno Peake, who's a royal pageant master. Bruno, great stuff. Thank you very much. How do you feel about Camilla now being officially Queen? It's caused a lot of controversy, a lot of people getting in touch with me on the inbox, gbviews@gbnews.uk, to say she will never be my queen. She's not on the same planet as Diana. I've had a lot of that.
Well, you're breaking up at the moment, but I can understand what you're trying to say.
Okay.
But the coronation is going to be an amazing opportunity for this country. It's going to be a showcase to the world. And I really do welcome Queen Camilla. We've now got a king and a queen. We've now got a king and queen in waiting and other members of the royal family. So our royal family is now in safe hands. And I wish the king and the queen many years of a great, happy and successful reign.
Do you think the public have now fully accepted Camilla? Because it doesn't appear that way.
Well, from my experience and from, talking to thousands of people, not just in the UK, but around the world, our monarchy is the most famous in the world. It's the most stable institution in the world, and people really do accept and want to applaud and are looking forward to the coronation of our king and our queen.
And I must say, I've started to get a wave of emails in now saying I'm very proud to call Camilla my queen. She's worked tirelessly not only for the royal family, but for various charities as well. And to be fair, Camilla has done a huge amount of public service, hasn't she?
Our future Queen Camilla has been a great stalwart, not just for this country, not just supporting His Majesty the King and the rest of his family. And as you quite rightfully said, she's done so much for various charities over many, many years. And I just know, and I feel in my bones, and I'm talking from people, not just, as I said, in this country, but from around the world, we're all looking forward to the coronation and the security of this monarchy for many generations to come. And I can tell you there are many countries around the world who are most envious of this great nation of ours. And we should always support it, promote it, be proud of it, and just thank God for it.
I agree with you. You know who seems to be the least proud of it sometimes is an annoying subsection of people who live here who keep wanting to talk us down all the time. And the reality is we're the best country in the world, and that, in my view, is why most people want to come here. But can I just ask you, one of those people who doesn't seem to want to come here is Joe Biden, who turned down an invitation. He's going to send his wife instead. He is, however, coming to Northern Ireland and Ireland to mark the 25th anniversary of the Good Friday Agreement. Do you think that's a bit offensive from Joe Biden?
I can't comment on other people. What other people feel and what other people do, it's their prerogative. You know. Again, I thank God we live in a free nation. We live in a country where we've got freedom of speech, and our monarchy is the head of this nation, the head of this country, and people around the world are envious of it. And whatever people say, we will be there for many, many generations to come. And all the doubting Thomases, all those people digging from the outside, whinging about this, whinging about that, they'll all be forgotten. Our monarchy will be here for many, many generations to come. And I really believe that we have a great king and queen and monarchy, and God willing, they will be there for many years to come.
Oh, Bruno, you're bringing a tear to my eye. Thank you very much. It's fantastic stuff. I'm looking forward to having Bruno back on. Bruno Peake there is a royal pageant master. Just reacting to the fact that, yes, Camilla is going to be queen, not queen consort. It's more of a mixed bag in the inbox now than it was at the start of the show, it's fair to say. Some people coming into bat for Camilla, but there we are. Now, to some very controversial comments from the man who is about to take charge of the biggest teaching union in Europe. If you've not seen this, you're not going to believe this. Daniel Kabedi is the president-elect of the National Education Union, whose members overwhelmingly rejected a pay offer earlier this week. And it's now emerged that Kabedi made some alarming comments at the Socialist Workers' Party's Marxism conference last year. The Times quotes him as saying this, that industrial action was about reasserting our professional control, taking back control of an education system from a brutally racist state that sends refugees to Rwanda. He also went on to reportedly say that we need a complete overhaul, and it is not simply about pay, it's basically about overthrowing the structure of society. So this guy, in charge of the largest teaching union in Europe, loads of teachers, one would imagine most teachers in the UK, essentially wanting them to strike not just about pay, but to overthrow society. Good stuff. So Chris McGovern joins me now. He's a former head teacher and now chair of the campaign for real education. This sounds a bit ominous, Chris.
Very ominous, not surprising to me, of course, because I've been saying, I've been warning about the National Education Union for some time. And it's very helpful, actually, for the new leader of the union to tell us how he feels about things. As a teacher for 35 years, I'm obviously concerned because it's bringing the profession into disrepute. I think a lot of parents will be alarmed. And actually, to be honest, a lot of teachers won't support this line at all. But here we have someone who's going to be the leader of the main union, the biggest teacher union in Europe, as you say, a political agenda. And it's going to be a bit like 1984, isn't it, where George Orwell talked about 2 minutes of hate every day. We have that institution. Hate yourself, hate your country, hate your empire or the Commonwealth. The interesting thing is, of course, people are queuing up to come.
But also sorry, Chris.
In the Commonwealth.
Chris, I'm sorry. It's hate the kids. It's hate the kids. But going into teaching, OK, you want to be paid well for it and you want to have a decent living and you have a good pension and you get decent holidays and all of that. Fine. It is not about overthrowing the fabric of society and replacing it from the ground up with Marxism. It is not that. It is about fundamentally teaching children. And this guy, from where I'm sitting, could very well stand accused of not caring about kids.
Well, as I say, it's most helpful to have someone in his position stating what our campaign group have been saying for a long time. The National Education Union is a revolutionary union. It's a bit like Mao's revolutionary guards. They want a cultural revolution, they want a social revolution, a political revolution. This is serious. You could dismiss it as being, it's just a lot of froth and nonsense. It's much more serious than that. These leaders want the teachers to continue to brainwash the children. There's a real contest taking place for the soul of our life and our community and our young people.
How dangerous is this guy, Chris? How dangerous is this guy? You know, I'm reading reports here in the Jewish Chronicle. New head of National Education Union accused of inciting violence at pro-Palestine rally. I'm looking now at the fact that he clearly, I mean, he said that he thinks that our institutions and our society is fundamentally racist. Is he going to be saying to teachers, teach your kids this?
Look, many teachers are already doing this. To be fair, though, and it's the only good news I've got, only 9% of his members actually took part in that vote. And so, it's not as though it's a massive, overwhelming endorsement, but he's going to be in power. But we need to lift the lid on what's going on behind the school, the classroom door. There's a lot of this taking place. And, not so long ago, a Labour Party conference in Brighton, we had a union representative, teacher representative, to loud applause saying, as long as a single child leaves school and votes Tory, the education system is failing. A few weeks ago, we had a member of that same union, the NEU, saying the only good Tory is a dead Tory. That's what we're in, Patrick, here. We're in a conflict here, a conflict for the soul of the country.
No, I'm sorry, but when people look at now teachers' demands, and I read stories like I did today about 1 in 3 newly qualified teachers skips meals because they haven't got enough money. Rubbish. Well, they don't look like skipping any meals from the newly qualified teachers that I see walking around. And also, as well, on top of that, I looked at the average salary. It's about 25 grand a year. That's outside London. There's no way you're telling me that you're skipping meals. I mean, you can end up earning a decent wage as a teacher. You get decent holidays, etc. Are they just now being led, when the calls for the next pay rise come, which is, I imagine, literally happening right now, it is, are we just looking at this and going, you're being led by a rampant Marxist who's got some pretty radical views about Britain? I'm not going to listen to your pay rise, I'm afraid. I think you might be a little bit woo.
But what we got here, Patrick, is lions led by donkeys. These union bosses are donkeys. They're narrow-minded. They don't see the bigger picture. And yeah, look, I'm a teacher. Teachers do work very hard. There's some heroic figures in teaching. They work hard. They're paid reasonably well on international scales. They shouldn't be out on strike. We should have something like a Hippocratic oath used to have in medicine. You should never harm the children. And I say that as someone early in my career who was ordered on strike. I went on strike too, so I know what it's like. I'm ashamed of that. We should never go on strike. We do want teachers to have a good salary, and there's plenty of money in the education budget to pay teachers a good salary.
Yeah.
A majority of school staff are not teachers, so we need to cut back on the non-teaching staff.
Okay.
It's as simple as that, and the government needs to listen to this.
All right, Chris, thank you very much. Chris McGovern there is a former head teacher and now chair of the Campaign for Real Education. That's going to be a story to watch, isn't it, this new guy in charge of the NEU. Should transgender women be allowed to use ladies' toilets? It's a subject that provokes strong opinions on both sides, and it looks as though now that our government has actually properly taken a stance on this. I'm Patrick Christys on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things. We've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat. Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. I campaigned in the largest democratic vote in our island's story. I know this country has so much to be proud of. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better. The wisdom of the nation is in its people. Vox Populi, Vox Dei. That's why I'm joining the People's Channel. Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
Welcome back. Now, the UK car market is showing signs of life, with new car registrations up by almost a fifth over the last year. That's according to new figures from the Society of Motor Manufacturers and Traders. We are not quite up to pre-pandemic levels, though, but it's definitely a drive in the right direction for the hard-hit automotive industry. Well, joining me in the studio to pick through these figures is GB News' economics and business editor, Liam Halligan, with On the Money. Right then, Liam, signs of life.
Indeed, our car-making industry still employs thousands, tens of thousands of people when you include car distribution, car retailing and so on, and there are definite signs of life in both production and sales. I've got some graphics here for you, Patrick, and radio listeners can bear with us. Back in March 2023, last month, 287,825 cars were registered, new cars, and March is an important month. It's the new plate month when the registration plate changes. That's up 18.2% from March 2022, when it was more like 243,000 cars. But that 287,000 cars in March 2023, Patrick, last month, that was still 36% down on March in 2019, before the pandemic, when we had 450,000 new car registrations. And in March 2017, those heady days, remember them, you were barely born, we had 550.
A few years ago,
550 cars. Bear with me. And if you look at these new car sales by type in March, diesel down 20%, battery and electric up 19%, hybrid up 36%. So hybrid cars, where you have you have an engine, but you also have a battery, and the engine charges the battery, so you don't often have to plug in, if at all, with some hybrids. And EV cars now, all electric vehicles, they're now well over a third of all new vehicles sold.
I'm very sceptical about getting one of those.
Yeah, so am I. I think the bottom's going to fall out of electric vehicles. Not necessarily hybrids, but I think the battery technology is too flimsy and it's too dependent on the likes of lithium, copper, cobalt, these rare earths that are getting increasingly expensive and increasingly hard to extract because they're often in quite difficult parts of the world.
So what would the message be then? Obviously not giving cast iron advice or anything like that, but I mean, if you were in the market for a new car, I think it's worth hanging about a bit.
OK, good question. Wait. I would wait. Why would I wait? I'll tell you why. Have a look at this paragraph from a report by the investment bank UBS. These are guys and girls who sit around analysing different sectors, and sometimes their reports fall into the hands of journalists. So this is UBS, a car report released this morning. Given the bullish production schedules, say UBS, that's optimistic production schedules, we see high risk of overproduction and growing pricing pressure. That's pressure downward as a result. The price war's already started unfolding in the EV space, electric vehicles, and we expect it to spread into the combustion engine segment. What does that mean, all that gobbledygook? It means that a lot of the supply chain issues that we saw during lockdown, they're now starting to ease, and it's feast or famine, right? We had too few cars, and now quite soon we're going to have too many, getting ahead of demand because a big surge in production, all that pent-up production, is hitting a consumer market around the world that's been a bit spooked by interest rate rises and bank wobbles and all the rest of it. So what UBS is saying is if you're interested in buying stocks and shares in the car sector, that's why they do these reports, they're saying that there are going to be pricing pressures downward, i.e. lots and lots of cars and not enough demand to soak up all that supply. So that means prices will come down. We're already seeing this in the electric vehicle space. The price of Teslas even is coming down. A very kind of upmarket car. It's come down by £5,000 or £8,000 in recent months. So I would say, if you're looking to buy a car, and there are signs of life, not just in those new car registrations, just hold your horses a little bit. That would be my personal advice. I'm not qualified to give financial advice, but that would be my personal advice as this surge in production comes to the fore, as more and more consumers get more nervous. The car makers are going to have to start discounting.
Good stuff, Liam. Thank you very much. As ever, Liam Halligan, our economics and business editor. Right, OK, so we've just about got time for one more before the end of this hour. We're going to hear from the Prime Minister now. Rishi Sunak has given this reaction to the announcement that 500 asylum seekers will be housed on a barge in Portland Harbour. This has just dropped. Let's play it.
Well, I think everybody knows one of my 5 priorities is to stop the boats, and as part of that, we've got to reduce the pressure on hotels and communities up and down the country. We're spending as a country £6 million a day housing illegal asylum seekers in hotels. That can't be right. I've committed to reducing that number, moving asylum seekers out of hotels, and that means we need to find alternative sites, and including barges like the one we've brought forward today. That's going to save the taxpayer money, reduce pressure on hotels, and it's part of our broader plan to stop the boats. That's why we're passing a new law through Parliament that will ensure that if you arrive here illegally, you will not be able to stay. We will be able to detain you and then swiftly remove you to your own country if it's safe, or a safe alternative like Rwanda. That's our plan. I'm committed to stopping the boats, and this is all part of delivering on that.
Yes, OK, right, well, we'll have more on this throughout the course of the show. That's the breaking news. 500 asylum seekers, all men, as far as we understand it, are going to be placed on a boat in Dorset despite massive local opposition. Moving on. Kemi Badenoch is said to be considering plans to change the Equality Act that could see the introduction of explicit legal protections for biological women in same-sex spaces and sports for the first time. The Equalities Minister has said the government wants to look at creating a legal distinction between people who were born female and those who had transitioned to become women. Joining me now for a discussion on this is human rights campaigner Peter Tatchell and Director of Transgender Trend, Stephanie Davis-Araya. Thank you very much, both of you. Great to have you on the show. Stephanie, I will start with you. Do you think this is a step in the right direction, or is it oppressive?
No, absolutely, it's a step in the right direction. You can only support both women's and trans rights if you can make a clear distinction between those two categories and those two protected characteristics. So the inclusion of trans women or men who identify as women into women's spaces has led to detriments to women's equality. So when you include male athletes in female sports, for example, every time a female athlete is excluded, toilets and changing rooms, women are self-excluding. Women of particular religions cannot use those facilities anymore. The most vulnerable women, those who've been sexually abused, cannot use those facilities. So, you know, on a company board, you can fulfill your quota of women on the board by employing a man who identifies as a woman, and therefore a woman loses her place. And what we're seeing in schools, it particularly worries me that schools are, everybody seems to be confused about this difference between the protected characteristic sex and gender reassignment. They are separate protected characteristics. Trans people are not losing rights through making this clear. So what schools are doing are conflating those two protected characteristics so that they are the same, and that always disadvantages girls.
OK, all right, I'm going to bring Peter in now. Peter, there seems to be an obvious solution to this for me, which is build more changing rooms and toilets so that people can use them, and also, as well, just create trans categories at sports events. Then everybody's happy, no?
Well, this proposal would fundamentally change the Equality Act, which is one of the most important and significant legislations this century. It protects everyone against discrimination. It guarantees equal treatment for everyone in all circumstances. I would be very reluctant to see any changes to that status, and in particular, to single out trans people for particular exemptions. Under this proposal, it would mean that a trans woman who has a gender recognition certificate, a legal gender recognition certificate, would be recognised in that certificate, but that certificate would have no status under a revised Equality Act. When it comes to issues like changing rooms and toilets, look, most of us have been to pop festivals where there are gender-neutral toilets. They're all porta-cabin toilets lined up, portaloos lined up everywhere. They've got lockable cubicles. There's not a problem. You know, there have been a handful of incidents where trans women have done bad things, but that is not the basis on which we make law in this country. Just because of a few bad apples, we don't penalise a whole community, and that's what this legal change would do.
We're going to have to be quick, Amber. Go on.
That is the basis on which we have separate sex facilities in the first place. We don't say all men are rapists. We have separate facilities for the safety of women and girls based on that minority, and most men would agree with the need for that.
OK, all right, Peter, look, I'll just give you the final word on this. Look, with respect, trans people are by definition different to normal sexual birthrights or whatever, you know what I'm trying to say. So why shouldn't they have a different characteristic?
Look, you're absolutely right. You know, trans women are different. Their difference is based on gender identity, whereas other women have their identity based upon their biological sex. And I would just say these are two different things. Biological sex is perfectly valid. So is gender identity. Let's find the common ground. I just hate the way in which trans people are being victimized and demonized like they're the enemy within. They're not. They don't cause discrimination against women. They don't cause sexual assaults and abuse and harassment of women. Focus on the real enemy. It's misogynist men.
OK, all right, well, look, both of you, thank you very much. Bit pressed for time. We could have obviously gone on there, but I'll have to get you both back on to discuss this further. That is Peter Tatchell, human rights campaigner and director of Transgender Trends, Stephanie Davies. Right, huge news today coming in from the government's battle to solve the migrant crisis. They have signed a deal, put pen to paper, that would see 500 single adult men housed on a barge off the coast of Dorset whilst their asylum claims are processed. But there's more to it than that, and I'll tell you why very shortly. I'm Patrick Christys on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the people's channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christys, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News has its own late-night paper preview show, Headliners, where comedians take you through the next day's top news stories. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper, we've got it covered for you. Headliners, every night at 11 p.m, and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
I'm Michael Portillo. Join me on GB News on a Sunday morning for topical discussion, debate, arts and culture, and sometimes even ethical dilemmas.
I don't always agree with you, Michael.
Michael Portillo, Sundays on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good evening, everybody. It's just gone 5 p.m. You're with me, Patrick Christys, on GB News, and I've got a lot on this hour. The breaking news: the government has put pen to paper and signed a deal to house 500 single adult men on a barge off the coast of Dorset who have just made their way across the Channel. Big controversial plan that. We'll bring you the latest on it. And yes, as well, in other news, the largest ever child sexual abuse investigation carried out by West Midlands Police has now culminated in 21 people being convicted of utterly shocking crimes. Yet again, we'll bring you more info on all of that. And north of the border up in Scotland, that's right, Nicola Sturgeon's husband has been arrested as part of a probe into the SNP's party finances. And that's going to be one to watch, let me tell you. And finally as well, Queen Camilla. Is she your queen for the first time? She's dropped the old consort title. She's going to be the queen. How do you feel about that? It's caused a lot of hoo-ha in the inbox. GBViews at gbnews.uk. Is Camilla your queen? Yeah, get in touch. Quite a lot for you to go at today, ladies and gents, isn't there? GBViews at gbnews.uk. How do you respond to that latest announcement about the government sticking 500 mostly single young men on a barge off the coast of Dorset? That really has got people going. And also as well, Camilla, we've got a poll on this now on Twitter at GB News. You can take part in that. Is Camilla your queen, or should she stay as queen consort? GBViews at gbnews.uk is the email address. Get in touch. But right now, it's your headlines.
It's 3 minutes past 5. Good evening to you. I'm Aaron Armstrong in the GB newsroom. The Prime Minister has defended plans to house asylum seekers on a barge in Dorset, claiming it will save the taxpayer millions of pounds every year. The government's confirmed a deal has been signed despite the threat of a legal challenge from the local district council and Tory MPs. The Bibby Stockholm, which can accommodate around 500 people, will provide basic but functional facilities. It will also have around-the-clock security to minimise disruption to the local community. Rishi Sunak says the government is taking a fair approach to tackling illegal migration.
We're spending as a country £6 million a day housing illegal asylum seekers in hotels. That can't be right. I've committed to reducing that number, moving asylum seekers out of hotels, and that means we need to find alternative sites, and including barges like the one we've brought forward today. That's going to save the taxpayer money, reduce pressure on hotels.
21 people have been convicted of sexual offences against 7 children in Walsall who were younger than 12 when they were abused. West Midlands Police says the offences were committed over a period of almost 10 years. 3 trials have been held over the past 15 months, with reporting restrictions in place until their conclusion. The offenders will be sentenced next month. A man's admitted to killing his wife and children in Northamptonshire. Saju Chalavalal pleaded guilty to the murders of Anju Ashok, as well as 6-year-old Jiva Sanju and his sister, Janvi, who was 4. They were found with serious injuries at a house in Kettering last December. Despite efforts to save them, Ms Ashok died at the scene and their children later died in hospital. Nicola Sturgeon's husband, Peter Murrell, has been arrested. Detectives have been searching the SNP's headquarters, collecting evidence. A cordon's been set up around the couple's home. The former chief executive of the Scottish National Party is being questioned as part of an ongoing investigation into party finances. Police Scotland's been investigating the spending of around £600,000 earmarked for the independence campaign. Scotland's First Minister, Humza Yousaf, says the SNP is cooperating with police.
Will have questions. They will have. There will be some concerns. Our party membership, of course, will have concerns too. So what I can commit to is party leaders that we want to be absolutely transparent. That's why I asked NEC to agree to a review around governance and transparency, and also to make sure it has some external input, which I think is really, really important to give confidence, not just to our party members, but to anybody in the public that might have some concerns too.
The chairman of the blood inquiry says compensation for victims should be extended. Thousands of patients were infected with HIV and hepatitis C through contaminated products in the 1970s and 80s. An independent inquiry has set out its second interim report. Last year, it recommended victims of the contaminated blood scandal receive interim compensation of £100,000. Inquiry chairman Sir Brian Langstaff has described it as the biggest treatment disaster in the history of the NHS.
My conclusion is that wrongs were done at individual, collective and systemic levels. Today is an important milestone on the journey to establish what happened and why, to learn the lessons of the past, and to make amends as much as we can as a nation.
Well, two victims of the scandal have said the report proves there were questions to answer.
We all welcome Sir Brian's interim report. I think it covers everything that all of the groups have been saying over the years, and it's good to see that we are now being believed, and we're not hitting our head up against a brick wall as we have done in the past.
They were wronged, we were wronged, all the families were wronged, and that has to be put right. And the financial packages set down by Sir Brian today goes in some way to right that wrong.
Raids have been staged across the UK as part of an international cybersecurity sting. The National Crime Agency estimates the personal data of tens of thousands of Britons was stolen by the website Genesis Market, which has now been taken offline. 80 million sets of credentials were illegally acquired from sites including online banking, shopping and social media. They were being sold for as little as 56 pence per entry. Digital fingerprints from victims' devices were also on offer. 24 suspected users of the site have been arrested across the UK. Donald Trump is calling for the Department of Justice and the FBI to be defunded, claiming law enforcement in the United States has become weaponised. The former president has pleaded not guilty to 34 criminal charges of falsifying business records, as well as covering up hush money payments during his 2016 election campaign. Trump insists he's innocent and he's a victim of election interference. The next in-person hearing will be in December. This is GB News. More as it happens. Now, back to Patrick.
Welcome back. Big news at the top of this hour. We start with the fact that a major development has taken place in the battle to solve the migrant crisis. The government has signed a deal to house up to 500 asylum seekers on a barge in Portland Harbour in Dorset. The contract will see the 93-metre-long Bibby Stockholm come under Home Office control. The Home Office says the barge will accommodate single adult males whilst their asylum claims are being processed. Rishi Sunak says the deal will save the taxpayer money.
Well, I think everybody knows one of my 5 priorities is to stop the boats, and as part of that, we've got to reduce the pressure on hotels and communities up and down the country. We're spending as a country £6 million a day housing illegal asylum seekers in hotels. That can't be right. I've committed to reducing that number, moving asylum seekers out of hotels, and that means we need to find alternative sites, and including barges like the one we've brought forward today. That's going to save the taxpayer money, reduce pressure on hotels, and it's part of our broader plan to stop the boats. That's why we're passing a new law through Parliament that will ensure that if you arrive here illegally, you will not be able to stay. We will be able to detain you and then swiftly remove you to your own country if it's safe, or a safe alternative like Rwanda. That's our plan. I'm committed to stopping the boats, and this is all part of delivering on that.
OK, so it has been met with scepticism in Dorset. The local Conservative MP wants to, quote, consign it to the dustbin. Also the local council, the mayor, a residents' association and charities as well. But it is actually, as I was talking to an immigration expert earlier on, part of an interesting policy which would, the way it's going to plan out anyway, is to just keep people on these barges and in these detention centres, like the one I'm going to take you to very shortly, for a very short period of time, whilst their claims are processed, before they are either flown over to Rwanda or deported back to their country, or, in some cases, of course, granted asylum in Britain. I'm going to go now to Bexhill, where GB News' South East of England reporter Ray Addison is for us, to react to both of these stories. Now, Ray, we are expecting there to be a bit of a protest where you are now at a disused prison, which is due to be housing, again, young single men who have just made their way over the channel.
That's absolutely right, Patrick. Yes, there was supposed to be this evening a meeting at the town hall in Bexhill-on-Sea. That's been cancelled because the council are concerned that members of the public are going to go and confront local councillors and other officials. And they say the venue also is just simply not big enough to house the number of people that want to have their say. They're promising that they're going to reorganise and reschedule that event and give people the opportunity to talk. However, residents are saying they're going to still go down there tonight at 7 o'clock anyway, just to show their views and sort of show how passionate they are about this issue. I'm stood outside of former HMP North Eye here in Little Common, and Lynn Payne is a resident here. Lynn, you live very, very close to this. So tell me, how long have you lived here, and what's your reaction to this this development?
I've been here 3 years and I really don't want it. We thought it would eventually go for development, so you would just simply have cars coming in, it would be the road in. But to know that we're going to have 1,200 single men is not going to be welcomed by anybody, I don't think.
Now, the Home Office are saying that mostly these men will remain inside of this accommodation. They'll be provided with adequate facilities to keep them busy. So what are your major concerns?
Major concerns are that their fact sheet actually says that they're free to come and go as they want. We've got one bus route between here and Hastings, which is, I think, one bus every 20 minutes in peak rush hour. Well, even if you took a quarter of those people trying to get on that bus, we then have no bus service. I mean, in the mornings, you can't get a bus to college. My son will get turned off the bus because it's full already. So it's not going to take...
You're concerned about infrastructure and so... What about house prices as well? One homeowner I was talking to was saying that their house has actually, they've had to accept a £35,000 discount. They were in the process of selling their house since this announcement was made. You've lived here for 3 years. Are you concerned about that?
Enormously. I have literally just finished my house. I've just had the builders hand the keys back a week ago. So as far as I'm concerned, my house is now finished. And I don't even want to think or look at house prices at the moment because basically I don't even think it's a question of house prices. Given what's going on, I don't think anyone's going to buy here for a considerable time. And if it does go ahead, you've got a long while to wait and see how it settles, etc. But it's certainly going to take us into a much less desirable area than we were before.
There's a gathering tonight, as I was saying, at the town hall. Concerned residents, will you be there?
No, the majority of the Residents' Association on the actual estate aren't going because the meeting's been cancelled and we don't want any more scenes of anger or anything else. We want to fight it properly and we want to get our view across, but it's about 1,200 single men. It's not about where they've come from. It's not about who they are. It's about if you put 1,200 single men in a facility that was built for 500 with inadequate facilities and nothing to do in the area because Bexhill is so quiet, you know, there is bound to be trouble of some sort because people are only human.
One local resident here on this street was telling me that in the past, when the UAE used this as a training centre, there was some speeding on this road. And the way they solved that was by blocking the road off with cars as a sort of negotiation tool to stop the speeding. And apparently that worked at the time. He's saying to me that he's talking to legal advisors at the moment to see if they could do a similar thing for this to actually stop buses delivering migrants to this facility. Would you support that?
I'm not going to comment on that because I could see angry scenes coming from that, and I'm not really at my age prepared to get involved in that sort of thing.
Let's talk about the actual facility itself. It's been here for a long time, since the 1980s. It's had so many different uses. As we can see behind us, it's in a pretty severe state of disrepair. Certainly we can see smashed windows, rust on many of the utilities and facilities here, rusted pipes, and the main sewage from all of this local area goes into this facility as well. Is it actually, do you think, a place to accommodate 1,200 men?
No, as I said, it was built for 500. When there were security guards on it up until May last year, they said that the vast majority was falling into disrepair. So things like the theatre, they said there was water gushing through the ceilings, the empty houses that are attached to it, they've been left without heating, so all the water tanks have burst and they've become uninhabitable in some places. The estate is supposed to be maintained by the prison. We have virtually no street lights now. Our sewage, the drainage is not good, and it's all supposed to be run by the prison, and it's empty and we have problems. So
pretty tough conditions to start with. Lynn, thank you very much for your time. Really appreciate it. And now the Home Office is saying, Patrick, we have a legal obligation to provide destitute asylum seekers with accommodation. And they're saying that this site will actually help the local economy because it's going to bring much needed money into the area.
Absolutely. Look, Ray, thank you very much, and thank you to that wonderful resident there as well for giving her views on it. And I think it's important, bear that in mind, ladies and gents, because I can see this coming a mile off tonight, because there was talk of there being a protest. There'll be some people bust in who are claiming to be anti-fascist or whatever, and they're going to call ladies like that the far right, and she's just obviously not, is she? So there you go. The other big migrant story that we're talking about today, of course, is that barge, and that's going to be used. The government has signed a deal there. 500, mostly young men, entirely young men, actually, are going to be housed on that barge. It's in Dorset, and Eddie has got in touch to say he's a resident of South Dorset, and he wants to point out that Portland, which is where this barge is going to be stationed, is slap bang in the middle of the Jurassic Coast, which is a World Heritage Site, and he says that that's going to be an issue there, which is a view that is shared by the local MP, the Mayor, a Residents Association and charities, although I think the charities are more off the human rights grounds, aren't they? But we'll bring you more on that as and when we get it, because we're moving on now to just an absolutely devastating story that dropped just as I came on air earlier this afternoon. 21 people have been convicted of sexual offences against 7 young children in Walsall. West Midlands Police says the offences were committed over a period of almost 10 years in what's been the biggest investigation of its kind that it's ever dealt with. The offending against 7 children who were 12 years old or younger took place over nearly a decade in Walsall and in Wolverhampton. I'm joined now by our national reporter, Paul Hawkins, who's got more detail on this. Paul.
Yeah, 21 people convicted of child sexual abuse offences. This is West Midlands Police's biggest ever child sexual abuse investigation. In fact, there were 22 people that they were prosecuting. The scale of this investigation was so huge that it covered 3 trials, starting in January last year, running through, I think, till May. Then the other one was September to January this year, and then this 3rd trial has just concluded. And there were a lot of reporting restrictions in place, which is why we couldn't report it until now. These offences were against 7 children aged 12 years old or younger, spanning almost a decade of abuse in Walsall and Wolverhampton. The offenders ranging in ages from 22 to 17, from 22 to 72, 13 men, 8 women, and 13 of them have been jailed. Sentences ranging from 28 months to life. The longest sentence given to James Evans, found guilty of 20 child sexual abuse-related offences. He gets life with a minimum term of 18 years, as well as being given a sexual harm prevention order for life. This abuse came to light when one of the victims went to hospital in 2017, and then it started to unravel from there. The victim showing incredible bravery to reveal, to open up to police about what had happened. And the police then launched Operation Satchel, which then brought about eventually these convictions. Some of the most shocking abuse that I've seen in my career, according to Detective Superintendent Paul Drover, they have been through significant amounts of trauma. Walsall Safeguarding Children's Board are coordinating a report into this to see whether there could have been intervention earlier on, and that's due to be published. And this, of course, coming in the week when there's been a lot of coverage of grooming gangs. Suella Braverman talking about the perpetrators being groups of men, almost all British Pakistani. Rishi Sunak saying that we mustn't let political correctness get in the way of talking about ethnicity. On the other side of that argument, a lot of people pushing back, such as the chief executive of the NSPCC, Sir Peter Wanless, saying they do not just come from one background. You know, it's interesting because I know that your guest in the last hour said she wouldn't have referred to them as a grooming gang. She'd call them a paedophile ring, a very close-knit paedophile ring. And I was thinking, well, what's the difference between a grooming gang and I've been doing some research out there. I still haven't been able to establish it. I've spoken to the police myself. They said they can't advise on this. They haven't put that in their press release. The NSPCC couldn't advise either. So I'm left thinking, well, what's the difference between a grooming gang and a very close-knit paedophile ring? It sounds like a trite conversation, but terminology around these extremely emotive issues is really important. So, you know, perhaps that's one for debate. But yeah, these are 21 people then convicted of these offences. Some of them already serving time. Some will be sentenced at a later date.
Good stuff, Paul. Thank you very much. Cheers. Paul Hawkins, our national reporter. And I'm joined now by Jim Gamble, who's Chief Executive of an ex-safeguarding group. And I believe he's there. There he is, Jim. Yeah, look, an absolutely staggering case, this, really, for all the wrong reasons. And I think it's just a sign for people that this kind of absolutely abhorrent sexual abuse against children is taking place and continues to take place.
Well, it does. And I'm glad to hear Paul reflecting on what the Home Secretary and others have been saying about grooming gangs. I mean, the fact of the matter is this is a timely reminder if we need it. It's about proximity. It's about proximity with vulnerable young people and those individuals who will take advantage of that to control, access and abuse them. And so I think, first of all, really a moment just to say how important it is that these young people were able to come forward, that they were able to engage with social services, with the police, and support an investigation. I know many of them are now adults, but they really deserve to be applauded. Because the thing about predators, no matter what background they come from, is because they are predators, their offending does not stop up to and until they themselves are stopped. So by coming forward, by supporting this prosecution, these young survivors of this abuse have made a difference, not just in their own lives, but for other people.
Jim, can I ask you a question, just to pick up on something that Paul was saying there? Look, I'm running my finger down the list of names of the people who are responsible for this, and some of their mugshots are on the screen for our TV and online viewers now. A lot of them have the same surname, and there's multiple different, what would appear to be familial names here, so it would appear that there's a group of families who do, again, appear to live in incredibly close proximity to each other. Is this a grooming gang, or is this a paedophile ring? What is it?
Well, very difficult to say without knowing the background. And of course, when you have interfamilial abuse, one of the most common forms of abuse where members of families are able to coercively control, to influence, to keep secrets, to support one another. And of course, in a family, have access to children. And I'm not saying that's what's happened in this instance, because there's been reporting restrictions and there'll have been some nuanced reasons for that. But they do seem simply like those individuals who've neglected children, those individuals who've accessed and abused them. So without a shadow of a doubt, they are child abusers, and some of them at the most serious end of that scale. Grooming gangs are generally when groups of people come together, and they are generally dealing with teenage, slightly older children. And what happens is there's a grooming process where they normalize abnormal behavior. So they will get groups of young girls. They will ply them with alcohol, with drink. They will make them feel like they are girlfriends. And through that process, they give them the gift of friendship, bring them into a group because they may previously have felt isolated or alienated. And once they're in the group, as I say, they normalize abusive conduct and behavior to the point that they think that, that what they're doing is normal. And that is the difference. Within other forms of child abuse, you'll have the predator abusing a child they can access. Within grooming gangs, it's much more nuanced and therefore much more difficult because very often the young people, the young teenagers, don't see themselves as victims and will be the first to push authorities back.
Oh, Jim, look, thank you very, very much. Much appreciated. Jim Gamble there is Chief Executive of Unique Safeguarding Group, which apparently is quite difficult for me to say. Just whizzing you through that story there. Look, absolutely deplorable stuff, that, isn't it? We'll bring you more information as and when we get it. Right, so how about this? The man who's about to take charge of Europe's biggest teaching union says that the UK is a brutally racist state and that striking teachers is not just about the money, it's basically about bringing down the society as we know it. This bodes well, doesn't it? I'm Patrick Christys on GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, "Nah, stop arguing." I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment.
I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
You're an inspiration to us all.
Clip that bit off.
Well, you are.
That's my ringtone. My political ambitions those days are gone, I can tell you.
She's only teasing. Go on.
He's probably going to want to lay down now. I'll give him 2 minutes to have one. Let's respectfully disagree. That's what we like on Jubes and Kerr. Come and join us. GB News, the People's Channel.
Michelle Dewberry, weekday evenings at 6 o'clock.
Start the day with GB News.
We catch up on all the big stories you didn't hear the night before.
And take a look at what the world's talking about this morning. That's right, Monday to Thursdays from 6 o'clock. It's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Straight after breakfast, join us, Bev Turner and Andrew Pearce. We're going to take you through till noon.
We'll be tackling the big topics of the day, including the things that the other channels just won't talk about. If it's happening here. Wake up to mornings on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by 2 of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me. So anyway.
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We've got a brand new lineup every Saturday night on GB News.
From 6 p.m, I'll give you my unique take on the world today.
Then at 7, it's me, Calvin Robinson, with my Common Sense Crusade.
New to GB News is the Saturday 5.
5 times the opinion.
Join us every Saturday from 8 p.m. as we debate the week's stories.
With us 4, plus a special guest.
And at 9, of course, it's Mark Dolan Tonight. Brand new Saturday nights on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Right, well, this is a huge story coming out of Scotland that took everyone by surprise. Peter Murrell, who's the husband of Nicola Sturgeon, has been arrested in a police investigation into the SNP's finances. Murrell and Sturgeon's home in Glasgow has been searched, as have the SNP's headquarters. Murrell was the party's chief executive from 1999 until he resigned last month. And, of course, this is now a big case that is no doubt going to rumble on for some time to come. Let's cross now to GB News' Scotland reporter Tony Maguire, who's outside Murrell and Sturgeon's house. What's going on?
Hello, yes, Patrick. Well, today I'm here, and from about 8:30 this morning, police have been inside. They've erected this big blue tent, and they have been combing through contents of the house and contents from the garden. Now, we know that, obviously, this is an Operation Branch form, which the Police Scotland have been conducting really since the middle of 2021, after several complaints about what the SNP, particularly Peter Murrell, was doing with £600,000, which should have been ring-fenced for a second independence referendum. That's on top of questions around his £100,000 loan to the party as well. So today, like here in Edinburgh at SNP HQ, it's been a real flurry of police. And as somebody who obviously lives and works in Glasgow, I've seen what Old Firm police presence looks like, and I've got to say that today here and in Edinburgh, this is quite up there. And certainly quite a lot of action, quite a lot of police, detectives and seemingly all ranking officers it's taking their time here. Now, I've been here since 10 o'clock and certainly outside today, constant movement between officers. We know that the SNP are encouraging everybody who's asked to take, real care and offering any help requested from the police, and additional advice has been given to think twice before posting on social media, as obviously Peter Murrell was arrested as a suspect in this case and the contempt of court case applies.
Absolutely. Look, Tony, thank you very much. Tony Maguire there, GB News' Scotland reporter from outside Nicola Sturgeon and Peter Morrell's home. We'll be keeping a close eye on that one here. The investigation was launched after complaints about the SNP's handling of £600,000 in donations raised by the party, ostensibly anyway, to campaign for and hold a second independence referendum. That is going to be one to watch, ladies and gentlemen. Now, there's loads more to come between now and 6 o'clock. The invites to the coronation are calling her Queen Camilla. But I'm asking, in fact, we should have the results of this poll coming your way in a second. We've been doing that on Twitter. Is Camilla your queen? That's proved controversial. I'll be having a debate on that. And an annual St George's Day dinner has been cancelled at Oxford's Magdalen College, and it's instead going to be used to mark the end of Ramadan. So there we go. That's something that no doubt will get you going over the course of this news break. But first, it is your headlines with Aaron Armstrong.
Hi there, it's just after 5:30. I'm Aaron Armstrong in the GB newsroom. The Prime Minister has defended plans to house asylum seekers on a barge in Dorset, claiming it will save the taxpayer millions of pounds every year. The government has confirmed a deal has been signed, despite the threat of a legal challenge from the local district council and from Tory MPs. The Bibby Stock home, which can accommodate around 500 people, will provide basic but functional facilities, including around-the-clock security, in an effort to minimise disruption to the local community. Well, Rishi Sunak says the government's taken a fair approach to tackling illegal migration.
We're spending as a country £6 million a day housing illegal asylum seekers in hotels. That can't be right. I've committed to reducing that number, moving asylum seekers out of hotels, and that means we need to find alternative sites, and including barges like the one we've brought forward today. That's going to save the taxpayer money, reduce pressure on hotels.
21 people have been convicted of sexual offences against 7 children in Walsall who were younger than 12 when they were abused. West Midlands Police say the offences were committed over a period of almost 10 years. 3 trials have been held over the past 15 months with reporting restrictions in place until their conclusion. The offenders will be sentenced next month. Nicola Sturgeon's husband, Peter Murrell, has been arrested. Detectives have been searching the SNP's headquarters, collecting evidence. They've also set up a cordon around the couple's home. The former chief executive of the Scottish National Party is being questioned as part of an ongoing investigation into the SNP's finances. Police Scotland have been looking into the spending of around £600,000 set aside for the independence campaign. TV online, DAB, plus radio, and on TuneIn too. This is GB News.
Direct Bullion sponsors the Finance Report on GB News for gold and silver investment.
And here's a quick look at today's markets. The pound will buy you $1.2467 and 1.1422 euros. The price of gold, £1,623.09 per ounce. And the FTSE 100 closed, about an hour ago or so at 76.62.
Direct Bullion sponsors the Finance Report on GB News, investments that matter.
Big news concerning the royal family today. For the first time, Camilla has been referred to as the Queen rather than Queen Consort. The official invite to next month's coronation refers to Their Majesties King Charles III and Queen Camilla. More than 2,000 guests are being invited to attend the coronation on Saturday, May the 6th. Of course, Joe Biden has snubbed us, rather brutally, in a way that no matter what you say, Donald Trump would not have done. But anyway, it's enough of that. With me now is royal commentator Jenny Bond and former royal correspondent at The Sun, Charles Ray. Thank you very much, both of you, for joining me. Charles, is Camilla your queen?
Of course she is, Patrick. I mean, the point of all this is there is a hell of a hullabaloo over one word consort. The word consort has always been dropped by previous queens. The consort only means that she's not a blood royal and can never accede to the throne. Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mother, when she was queen, was a queen consort. Diana, had she lived and still remained married to then Prince Charles, would have been queen consort. Kate, when she becomes queen, and William is king, will be queen consort. It's inevitable. I haven't been using the word consort for some time because she is queen. And people are just jumping up and down because for some reason they see a step up in rank, but it isn't really. It's the same thing. She's still queen consort.
All right, OK. Jenny, how do you feel about this? We've got a poll running right now, and I've asked, do you accept Camilla as our queen? Yes. 53.2%. And can I tell you, there's some very strong views in my inbox, very, very strong views in my inbox, Jenny, about this. She will never be my queen. She's not on the same planet as Diana. I won't read out the name on that one. I mean, look, the people have not forgiven her, Jenny.
Oh, well, I think there is a hard cohort of Diana supporters who will never accept Camilla. But over the years, I've done a lot of public speaking, and I always ask the audience, and have done for many years, what they feel about Charles and Camilla. And at first it was, no, they cannot get married. This woman is evil. She's an adulteress. And then it softened. Public opinion softened. They were allowed to marry. Thank goodness. Hooray. I mean, how many of us have made a mess of our private lives? And are we all to be condemned to being second-class citizens forever afterwards? It's ridiculous. And now I've asked audiences in recent years, should she be queen? And again, the mood has softened. And I think the vast majority, as your poll shows, at least a majority, believe that she is worthy of being our queen. Of course she is. It'd be most insulting to say that when you're married to the king, you're not the queen. Of course you are.
Well, we're almost in second referendum territory with this poll. I hate to break it to you, Jenny, but 53%, we're not a million miles off. Charles, I've had some other emails in which are saying, look, Camilla has done a lifetime of service, lots of good work for charities, and she's actually worked tirelessly, especially in recent years, for the royal family. So deserving of the old Queen title.
Well, there is nothing else she could be called. She is queen. And Camilla has come an awful long way from the days that she used to hide behind bushes and in car parks and everything else. And she is an integral part of the royal family and is an integral part of the king's life. She, initially when her PR people were saying that she would never be queen, they came up with this fatuous title of Princess Consort. Nothing like that exists in Britain at all. But that was just a smokescreen because we're coming to this day and we'll have this day and she is going to be our queen. And I'm afraid those who don't like it are just going to have to lump it.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I'm very sorry, guys. We're going to have to move on now because we've had a bit of breaking news. But, Jenny, I know I only heard from you once there, but in honour of that, and to say sorry, I would like to anoint you as the queen of this show. OK, so there you go. That is Jenny Bond there and Charlie Ray. There we go. There we go. Everyone leaves with a smile. Right, OK. Earlier, we told you about some very controversial comments from the man who's about to take charge of the biggest teaching union in Europe. And it's emerged that this chap called Daniel Kebede, whose members overwhelmingly rejected a pay offer earlier this week, made some alarming comments at the Socialist... Well, I mean, you couldn't make this up. At the Socialist Workers' Party's Marxism conference last year. So the Times quotes him as saying that industrial action was about reasserting our professional control, taking back control of an education system from a brutally racist state that sends refugees to Rwanda. And that same union has released a survey where they've said that 1 in 3 young teachers in England are apparently skipping meals to make ends meet. With me now in the studio is Callum Robertson, who's a teacher and is also a policy officer for the Liberal Democrats Education Association. Thank you very much. So kind of two stories in one here. Great to have you on the show. First things first, do you think that the job of the teachers' union is to be telling teachers that they are part of a fight against a brutally racist organisation and country and that they should do their best to cripple it?
Absolutely not. Let's be honest.
That's reassuring.
And most teachers disagree.
Yeah.
So the National Education Union had its general secretary election, easy for me to say, a couple of weeks ago, and there was a turnout of 9%. He got he got something like 69% of that 9% turnout. He's got a mandate of about 1 in 20 teachers within that union. So let's not pretend he speaks for teachers, because he doesn't.
OK.
Because most teachers are very reasonable.
What kind of power does he have then? Because he is now in charge of the biggest educational union in Europe.
Yes. So he has power over sort of negotiation over pay, which, given his comments, is quite concerning.
Yes.
And I think in the next few days we will see a exodus of teachers from the National Education Union to NASWAT, which is seen as a more moderate teaching union, but also more senior teachers in the United Kingdom, so the ones who control budgets are usually members of the National Association of Head Teachers or the Association of School and College Leaders. So whilst it might seem like he's the biggest in Europe in of itself, he doesn't necessarily yield the most power.
OK, because I think a lot of people, especially in light of the fact that there's massive disputes over pay at the moment, just parents really, would be quite concerned that their kids' education might suffer because there's a guy in charge of the NEU who, look, from my perspective, isn't putting kids' education first. It's about some kind of race war and, you know, bringing down capitalism, etc. And that's not what people send their kids to school for, is it?
I mean, most teachers, myself included, are more interested in the classroom than class war. Let's not beat around the bush here. But there are, unfortunately, one or two people who... And they're perfectly entitled to an opinion.
Yeah, of course.
But if he stayed away from the classroom, then it would be
What do you make of this other one today, which is that similar reports coming out now about, so 1 in 3 newly qualified teachers are supposedly skipping meals. I've got to be honest with you, I don't believe that.
OK. If you look and delve onto the statistics, it's not just teachers, it's support staff.
Right.
Support staff within the United Kingdom are on as little as £14,000 a year.
OK.
That is often, when it's worked out as a salaried below minimum wage for the hours they work, they are skipping meals because there is no option there. Some teachers, especially in the outskirts of London, are skipping meals as well. And we know this because the salary differentials versus cost of living dictate that that has to be the case. But these figures aren't just the National Education Union, which, for previous comments, you might not trust. They're backed up by the IFS. The IFS shows that, on average, an average teacher has lost £6,600 a year since 2010.
Is there an argument to say that the teachers do get a generous percentage of their salary put towards a pension and they do get a lot of holidays and that's the price you pay?
Sure. I mean, I'm a serving teacher at the moment. I have spent the first week of my holiday, and will be until Friday, working, doing intervention classes for my Year 11 and 13 classes. The holidays are not all there. All that actually it looks like on paper, so let's not pretend that they are. But also, actually, I think really, really importantly, when we talk about sort of like the pension, the government is consistently trying to change that pension because for the government it is quite an expensive pension to keep. For teachers, some teachers will see it as a payoff for the lower wages.
Yes. I think that's one of the arguments. Look, thank you very much. Really appreciate you coming in and covering both those topics for us. It's great stuff, that. And that is, of course, been a fantastic topic of discussion, really, for a lot of people out there. I know that a lot of you will be wanting to get in touch and give us your views. GBViews at gbnews.uk. Callum Robertson there is a teacher and also a policy officer for the Liberal Democrats Education Association. Right, OK, so, moving on. An annual St George's Day dinner has been cancelled by an Oxford college. Magdalen College is instead using the occasion to mark the end of Ramadan. I'm Patrick Christys on GB News, and we are Britain's news channel.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything, I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat. Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. I campaigned in the largest democratic vote in our island story. I know this country has so much to be proud of. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better. The wisdom of the nation is in its people. Vox Populi, Vox Dei. That's why I'm joining the People's Channel. Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
OK, welcome back. Now, this has caused some debate in the office, but it's either Magdalen or Magdalen College in Oxford University, which I think summarises how few people in this office went to Oxford University, usually holds an annual banquet to mark the day of the English saint, St George, and students and academics are dining together to enjoy a traditional feast. However, it's been cancelled because instead they're going to mark the end of Ramadan. Head of Public Policy at Christian Concern joins me now, Tim Dieppe. Tim, I'm not being funny, but is this not just a visible sign of decline in Britain at the moment when it comes to Christian culture?
Yeah, I think it is, Patrick. I think it's quite shocking and disturbing, really, that this college appears to have cancelled what had become an annual dinner to celebrate and mark a Christian festival and celebrate a Christian saint, in fact, the patron saint of England, St George, and replace that with an Islamic festival, the festival of Eid. And I think that's just quite shocking and quite surprising. And it shows really, symptomatic really, of the increasing influence of Islam on the one hand and decline of Christianity, or decline of the influence of Christianity and decline of sort of pride in our Christian heritage across the nation on the other hand.
Yeah, I mean, look, the clue is in the name, really, on a few fronts here. We are a Christian country, no matter what anyone says. And though spelt in the, quote, biblical and continental way, it is actually pronounced Magdalen, for anyone out there who's been shouting at their television screens for the last half an hour or so. And I believe it was dedicated to St Mary Magdalene, whatever. I mean, and now they're going to bin off St George's Day and instead replace it with Eid. I'm sorry, I just don't understand why on earth this is happening, and is it not quite offensive to Christians?
Well, I think it is disturbing, put it that way. It's disturbing, I think, for Christians to see a Christian festival abandoned and replaced with an Islamic festival in this kind of way. And I think, you know, it's part of quite a significant uptick, I think, in the influence of Islam in this Ramadan. We've had Ramadan lights in London this year for the first time ever, the first Western city ever to put up lights for Ramadan. We've had the Premier League saying that they're going to pause games for Ramadan. A certain games when that needs to happen as well. Very significant sort of move there in terms of the influence of Islam. We've got John Lewis promoting Eid at the moment, even though it's Easter just coming up in the next few days. Eid seems to be the thing that's being promoted the most there. So I think you can see a very disturbing trend
Why,
here.
Tim? Why do you think it is? Do you think people are afraid of a perceived backlash? Do you think you have to actively promote something now, otherwise everyone thinks you're a frothing racist? Or do you think that one day Britain will be a Muslim country?
Well, I think, the battle is to be played on that, and we'll see how things pan out. But I think that clearly what's happening is people are moving away from Christianity and for some crazy reason being ashamed of Christian heritage and not interested in promoting Christian festivals, even the most important festival of the year, which is Easter, and replacing that somehow with Ramadan type of promotion and Eid type of promotion instead. And even in some cases, like the London School of Economics, replaced Christmas holidays with winter holidays, for example. And why are we ashamed of our Christian heritage? Because actually it's Christianity that has provided the values for Western civilization and the foundational system that we use today.
Well, exactly. And can I just say, sorry, Tim, I'm going to have to cut you off because it's about time, but can I just say as well that the extra ridiculous thing about this is that the kind of modern Christianity as well is much more aligned to our current societal norms and values, especially when it comes to, people who might call themselves woke, etc., than hardline fundamentalist Islam is. And I just find it bizarre that we've got massive adverts and lights on there to celebrate a version of Islam potentially that is much less aligned to the society that we have now, and yet we're not promoting the Christianity elements of it. Look, Tim, thank you very much. Tim Dieppe there, Head of Public Policy at Christian Concern. Right, we've just about got time for this. It's the next target for the government's ban list, OK, could be the shower in your home. Power showers could be banned under new plans to save water as ministers aim to crack down on high-flow bathroom products. I'm joined now by Alan Miller, co-founder of the Together Association. Alan, I understand that you feel very strongly about the fact that they might want to take your power shower away.
Well, I do, but I think that it reflects, Patrick, this problem that we've got at the moment, which is a bit of a broken Britain with our infrastructure, a lack of robust investment, R&D, productivity, and getting to grips with what a modern industrial nation needs. In Victoria and Australia, they've got a 2-metre wide, 87-kilometre pipe. We need to have new pipes that for water and actually for everything, for fuel, for nuclear, for IT. We've got a lack of commitment. The Victorians had much more, but we're dealing with their infrastructure, which have got leaks. We've also closed dozens of reservoirs. When we talk about capacity, we've closed many of them. We've only opened one in the south of England in Hampshire since 1973. Meanwhile, our water companies are co-owned by China and Australia and others. But the thing that needs to happen is that we need to have a commitment to a new sort of renaissance and investment. That's why the Together Association is launching a cabinet around industry and innovation and the economy, where growth and development and infrastructure and R&D is at the heart of things. That's what we need, and not to impose on citizens.
This is it.
Ban.
We're going backwards, Alan. We're literally going backwards. They want to cut individual demand from 144 litres a day to 122 litres a day by 2038. Excuse me, I'm sorry, no, we should be getting involved with infrastructure that allows us to actually use whatever the heck we want. I don't want to go back to... I mean, what next? We'll be outside toilets again soon, won't we? Just using a chamber pot.
The Environment Agency is saying there's going to be a potential, potential for droughts, like they're saying they might be power cuts. This is absolutely unacceptable. We need a commitment, and not to keep imposing on people, a bit like closing down our cities with curfews and with 15-minute neighbourhoods and low traffic neighbourhoods. The idea is that we have to limit, we have to tighten our belts. No, we need our elected representatives to actually get out there. There needs to be both private and public investment in infrastructure, and actually commit to it. And if they can't, they should get out of the way, because the public needs to be first with this.
And they go, oh, we've got to have more and more people coming in. All right, but now I've got to, reduce my shower, I can't see a GP, I can only travel one way very slowly on a bike around my city. I'm going to do all of this stuff, and you think, maybe we're not doing the right thing here. Look, Alan, I'm sorry it's so short and sweet, mate, but much appreciated. I've got to go, because otherwise I get shouted at. It's Alan Miller there, who is the co-chair of the Together Association. Look, it's well worth checking him out online and checking out all the work that the Together Declaration and Together Foundation do. Right, OK, thank you very much, everybody. I've been Patrick Christys. Up next is Michelle Dewberry with Jubes & Co, and she's going to drag you kicking and screaming through your early evening. And thank you very much. I will be back again tomorrow at 3 p.m, and I really appreciate all of your emails coming in as well. gbviews@gbnews.uk, especially some rather fruity views about whether Camilla is really your queen.
Hello there, I'm Greg Dewhurst, and welcome to your latest broadcast from the Met Office. Cloudy out there for the next 24 hours or so, the risk of some heavy rain and some showers too, but then turning brighter into the Easter weekend. Weather fronts across the UK at the moment bringing those outbreaks of rain, some stronger winds at times too. But the good news is, as we move into Good Friday, high pressure begins to build in, and we should see more in the way of sunshine. For the evening time, a cloudy, wet end to the day. Outbreaks of rain slowly pushing eastwards. Could be heavy at times, but it does start to turn a little drier from the west during the early hours. But the risk of some heavy showers moving in here too. But a lot of cloud around tonight, so that will hold temperatures up, generally well above freezing, 5 to 9 Celsius. A different start to Thursday, though, compared to recent days. A lot of cloud around. Outbreaks of rain still down the east coast, this slowly pushing into the North Sea. And then as we move through the day, we see an increasing risk of some heavy showers developing, potentially thundery, leading to some localised disruption, surface spray on the roads. And in between, there will be some sunny spells. Best of the drier, brighter weather, Northern Ireland, Western Scotland. Temperatures similar to Wednesday, highs around about 14 to 16 Celsius. Into the evening time, we'll see the risk of further heavy showers, particularly in the east, and these could merge into some longer spells of rain. But in the west, we'll see clearing skies, and once again, we'll see the return of a patchy frost to take us into Friday morning.